Hi, my name is Spencer, and I am a health educator with MHW. In this video series, I'm going to walk you through how to set up a meal plan. We're going to cover how to lose weight, how to keep the weight off long term, and most importantly, what do you need to do if you want to adjust your plan? If you're getting bored, if you're not losing weight, if you're unhappy for some reason, or if you have a temporary challenge like a holiday or a vacation, or you're going through a death in your family or something like that. How do you adjust your plan when it's not working or you're not happy with it so that you don't have to just give up altogether and you can keep moving forward? Before we get into the video, I want to say two things. The first is, I don't mind if you never pursue one of our programs, if you never go to the website, if you never watch any more of our videos, if you never spend a penny with us. The stuff that we're going to go over in these videos is going to be practical advice that should apply to any weight loss effort. Whether you're going to start a diet, whether you're looking at a new exercise plan, whether you're thinking about surgery or something like that long term. The advice that we give here will be practical advice that will apply to almost everybody, and will give you the power to start doing these things on your own. So even if you never pursue anything through us, that's okay. The advice that we're going to put through in this video series should still be helpful for you, and I hope that you think about it at the very least, even if you aren't going to pursue one of our plans directly. The second thing that I want to say before we even get started is that the people who are the best at managing their weight long term are not the people with the best diets or the best exercise plans or the best genetics or the best health or the most money or the best doctors. The people who do the best at losing weight and keeping it off long term are the people with the best support system. How do you stay motivated? If you're feeling like you're getting ready to give up, who do you go to get inspiration? How do you stay accountable? If you know that you're not going to keep yourself in check, who's going to keep an eye on you and make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to? How do you get ideas? Where do you go for recipes? Where do you go for advice? If you have a new challenge that you haven't faced before, you're going to a restaurant for the first time, where do you go to get that information? The people who do the best long term are the ones who have the best resources to be able to get that advice when they need it. So my first tip before we even get into anything else is to figure out who your support system's going to be. It can be friends, it can be family, you might have a doctor, you might have a personal trainer, you might have a partner who's going to go through this process with you, but it also might be an online forum. It might be a YouTube channel that you go to. It might be a place where you can interact and get advice digitally, and you never meet this person face to face. It might be us. Maybe we can be part of the support system for you, but make sure that you know where that support system is going to be and who you're going to turn to when you have questions and you need help. I say that especially before we start this video series because there's a decent chance you're going to have questions about the things that we cover here. And I want you to know that's normal. And when you do have those questions, you should check out our website and you should figure out how to get in contact with our office. Whether that means sending us an email or leaving a comment on our YouTube channel or actually finding our schedule for when we live stream so that you can ask a question directly to us and we can face-to-face right there get your questions answered. That is where the most success is going to come from. Hopefully everything we go through in these videos makes sense and it might click right away for you and you'll be ready to hit the ground running, but there's a good chance you're going to have questions at some point down the line. I can almost guarantee it. So get that good support system. That's all I have to say before we get into the series. Now let's get started. All right, unfiltered, we are going to put together a weight loss plan. I'm going to walk you through what needs to be a part of the plan. We're going to go through a couple of example plans. And after all of that, we're actually going to put together what a typical day will look like depending on what plan you put together. So breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks in between. What is my actual routine going to entail? We're going to do all that here live. I've got a chat going over here. My plan is to leave all mistakes and mumbles and everything else in here as well. And maybe we'll cut it down before we actually post it onto our website. But everything you need to know in order to make a plan will be put in here. If I fumble or stumble at all, I'll sum it all up at some point in the video so that hopefully it's cleaner for you. Let's get right into it. There are 7 parts of a good weight loss plan. Don't be intimidated. The plan is going to be simple when it's all said and done. There are 2 different parts of a good weight loss plan. The first is, what do you need to do in order to lose weight? That's the traditional stuff, diet, exercise. What are we focusing on? Is this a carb-based plan? Is this a calorie plan? Is this a high protein plan? Is this a don't eat past a certain time at night, starvation kind of a plan? How exactly am I going to start losing weight? That's really the most important part of a weight loss plan. It's also the most fun, and I know if you're watching this, it's the reason why you're watching, is because you want to see that. The other half of a good weight loss plan, though, is super important. It's often ignored, and it's the reason why most people fail to reach their goals. I have to stress that here before I even tee it up. It is, how do I make sure that I'm following the first part of the weight loss plan and that I'm actually going to be making progress towards my goals? It's also, how do I answer questions along the way? Okay, so you can sum it up in a couple of different ways, but it's accountability. How do I make sure that I stay on track? It is support in terms of maybe emotional support. If I'm losing motivation, who's going to pick me up? What's going to put me back on track? Make sure that I don't quit before I reach my goal. How do I make sure that I make it all the way? Where do I go for that inspiration? And finally, it is actual strategic support. And that is, where do you go to get specific questions answered? If I'm getting bored, where do I go for recipes? If it's not working, who can I talk to about why it's not working and how to make it work again? If I have a challenge, like I want to go to a restaurant and I've never been to a restaurant before, or I'm going to go on a plane and I've never been on a plane while trying to put this plan together, how do I get those questions answered? Where do I go for those kinds of support? That is the second half of the plan. It is critically important. What do I need to do? And then how do I make sure that it is working throughout the process? And if it isn't working, how do I make sure that I get back on track and keep that progress moving forward? So those are the 2 separate pieces. I have split each of them into 3 different components. This is how we're going to put your weight loss plan together. So for the actual weight loss, we're going to talk about fruits and vegetables. We're going to talk about meal replacements, and we're going to talk about physical activity. For the support and the staying on track and the getting your questions answered, we're going to talk about setting goals. We're going to talk about record keeping. We're going to talk about getting ongoing support. And then finally, you might, as a part of your plan, want to throw in some extra rules that are more personalized or more temporary, more short-term goals, rules that you put in place for yourself because you know how you've done in the past with dieting. So what extra stuff do you want to maybe put on top of everything else? We need to go through these one at a time. We need to make them, of course, easy to understand and simple. And I want to give you the ability in this video to actually make a plan for yourself. You can do that as we go along through each one, but you might want to wait until the end where I go through a couple of custom plans and you can see what they might look like when it's all said and done. Okay, let's start with the fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables are very simple. When you're going to put this part into your plan, it's going to be a number. It's going to be 5, or it's going to be 10, or it's going to be 3. That's a number that you get to choose. I like 5. That tends to be the magic number, but we'll talk about some potential options you have, what a typical plan might look like when we go over some example plans. Here's what you need to know. The number that you're picking is a number of fruits and vegetables that you're going to have every day, no matter what. It's a minimum, so if you want to have more, you can always have more. If you need to have more, you better have more. But at a bare minimum, it's a number that you're going to have every single day. So for example, if you say, I'm going to have 5 fruits and vegetables every day, that's your number, that's your rule. If it's a normal day, I'll put normal in quotations, you got to get 5 fruits and vegetables. You might want more. If it's a day where you're really stressed, or where you're really bored, or where you're really hungry, or maybe it's a day you're on vacation, or maybe it's a day where you got bad news, Or maybe it's a day where you're in a new relationship and you're going on a first date with somebody and you don't really know them and they don't really know you yet and you're trying not to look weird in front of them. It doesn't matter. Whatever the day is, that's the number of fruits and vegetables that you have picked. That's your plan. The goal is to pick a number so that you won't need a cheat meal or a day off or to feel like it's too hard for you to do, it's too oppressive when you do have one of those challenges. It really should be a bare minimum. And the way that I like to have my clients think about it is if the whole world turned upside down and you said, everything is going crazy right now, the least I can do is still eat a couple of vegetables every day, right? That's the number that you're trying to pick. I know things have gotten crazy. I know that I've got a lot of temptations around me. I know that I've been more depressed than I've ever been in the past. The least I can do is eat a couple of fruits and vegetables. That's the way that that particular part of the plan is supposed to work. A simple number that you can stick to every single day. It is not a maximum. You know you can have more if you need to, but it's this bare baseline. I'll do this. The whole world goes upside down. I got something in place so that I keep making progress towards my goal. Okay? Fruits and vegetables are very important for a number of reasons. The main one being that they are super low in calories and they push out other foods that would be worse choices. Okay, let me repeat that and clarify. Most people think fruits and vegetables are important because they're good for you, because they have a lot of vitamins or fiber or something else, because they're superfoods. And that is true. They do have all of these different health benefits. Some are healthier than others, but that is not important when we're talking about weight loss. The number one reason why you want fruits and vegetables for weight loss is because if you are eating broccoli, you are not eating potato chips. If you are having an apple, you are not having a slice of pie. That's why fruits and vegetables are important. The more you put into your day, the more you push out other decisions. Now, you're going to have a lot of questions. First of all, what does this number represent? 5. 5 what? 5 servings, of course. But what's a serving size? That's a question we have to answer. But we also have to answer, what types of fruits and vegetables are we eating? When are we eating them? Where are we getting them from? How are we cooking them? You're going to have all sorts of questions along those lines. I imagine that in previous diets, there were regulations that were put in place. Yes, you have to eat fruits and vegetables, but these ones are off limits because they're high in carbs or they're starchy. Yes, you want to eat fruits and vegetables, but these ones are going to mess you up on the glycemic index. They're going to cause blood sugar spikes, so they're going to have some effect like that. Yes, you got to have fruits and vegetables, but you're not supposed to eat them at certain times of day because they'll have weird effects on you. We're going to push all of that out to the side. Let me tell you exactly what you're doing with your fruits and vegetables. All right, follow me over. We're going to go to a different screen. All right. Fruits and vegetables. I'll zoom out just a little bit so that you guys can see what I'm looking at. This is a resource that you can find on our website, mhwonline.com. If you happen to see this video on YouTube, it's probably in the description of the video where you can find a link to this particular download. This is everything you need to know about fruits and vegetables. Okay? First of all, which fruits and vegetables are you allowed to have? I put allowed in quotations because the answer to that is any one you want. And I know you may go, ooh, but they told me don't eat potatoes. And to that I say, every single one of my in-person clients has been eating potatoes if they wanted to, if you like them. Potatoes aren't something to be scared about. Starch is not something to be scared about. Carbs are not something to be scared about. Of course, this is not medical advice per se. If you have a particular medical condition where your doctor's giving you advice, that might be a different case. But when we're talking about weight loss, I've had a lot of folks, men, women, young, old, different physical limitations, different health issues, different allergies, diabetic, high blood pressure. We've given them all these same base instructions. And that is eat fruits and vegetables. Okay? And potatoes are okay. Now, what you do have to think about is how you're going to prepare those potatoes. Sauces, spices, condiments, those matter. Potatoes are fine, but butter and bacon and cheese, stuff on top of them, not so great. Fried potatoes with oil, like chips, or French fries, I wouldn't count those as part of your vegetable goals for the day. You're going to want to make sure these are prepared in a safe way. We're going to talk about condiments specifically when we get to that extra rules section that was down at the bottom. I have one overarching rule for condiments, sauces, and spices that tells you everything you need to know. And I'll even give you a list on our website of sauces and spices that we recommend if you're just getting into it and you're not sure what you're supposed to be doing. But that you have to think about. Everything else is okay. Any fruit or vegetable you want. Fresh is the best case because you know exactly what's going into it. But frozen fruits and vegetables are fine. Canned fruits and vegetables are fine. Pickled fruits and vegetables are fine. I love pickles personally. I like marinated vegetables like mushrooms, different spices and seasonings and stuff like that. Those can be very, very interesting. There's a side dish where I am in the world, which is cucumbers and onions in vinegar. And they're marinated, and it's like a soft pickling. Really good in the summertime. And it became one of my favorites when I started eating more fruits and vegetables. I mentioned the pickled vegetables specifically because it's one that a lot of people ignore. Canned and frozen and fresh are all good as well. Again, the main thing you want to make sure is there's no sugar being added into it. There's no butter. There's no cheese. You'll see that stuff a lot. But you'll also see plenty of canned and frozen fruits and vegetables that don't have any junk in them. You just want broccoli if that's what you're going to get, and then you can choose how you want to spice it and do those sorts of things. And when it comes to which fruits and vegetables you're going to eat, the answer to that question is which fruits and vegetables are going to let you meet that goal. If your goal is to have 5 fruits and vegetables a day, you need to think about which fruits and vegetables are going to get you to that point. The top answer on that list is which ones taste good. Which ones do you enjoy? Which ones can you prepare in a happy way that make you want to look forward to eating them for the rest of your life? That's the number one answer up there. But in addition to that, you should think about practical solutions. Some days you might need fruits and vegetables that are portable. If you're running errands, if you're out of the house, if you're taking a day trip to the beach or something like that, you might want fruits and vegetables that you can carry with you. That might be canned vegetables and fruits. It might be raw vegetables and fruits. Those are really popular for their portability. I can grab a banana and leave the house and I have everything I need for the day. If in a different circumstance, you're in a situation where there's a particular temptation, you might want a fruit or vegetable that solves that temptation. Maybe everybody else is going to be having apple pie, so you want a dessert that you can make with apples that doesn't have the sugar and junk inside of it. In that case, the answer on that day is probably apples is the fruit or vegetable you should be eating. And maybe you're going to have a lot of them. If everybody else is eating potatoes, potatoes is probably the answer to that question. Maybe you're in a situation where you're going to a restaurant. Which fruits and vegetables can you get at a restaurant? That'll be the answer to the question. Okay? So if you're ever unsure which fruits and vegetables should you be eating, it's anyone that doesn't have junk added to it, and it's anyone that solves the problems that you're facing. Okay? Taste is going to be number 1. Convenience, things that are fast and easy to prepare, is going to be number 2. And then all the rest are like particular temptations, things that are portable, things that are easy, things that don't cost too much money. Those kinds of things will make up the rest of your answers to those questions. One big one to think about is things that are comfort foods. If you have a holiday and you want to celebrate, what makes it feel like a holiday? I make a lot of cinnamon stuff in the winter because it feels like Christmas to me. I do cinnamon apples, I do cinnamon pumpkin things. I like that particular recipe because it is a comfort food to me. You also have to think about comfort in the sense of emotional and stress relief. If you just broke up with your boyfriend, you might want some comfort food. What fruits and vegetables make you feel comforted? Soups, I think, are really good for that. And I think that's the number 1 spot where potatoes are important when you're trying to lose weight. Potatoes make me feel good, and they make it feel like a big filling meal, and they make it feel like I'm doing something when emotionally I'm not feeling the best, right? If I'm stressed, if I've got a lot on my mind, if I'm dealing with a lot, if I have a loss that I'm trying to cope with, potatoes help with that. And again, there are a lot of other fruits and vegetables that might do that trick for you too. I recommend that you experiment. Cherries are another one that are good for me in those circumstances. I have a lot of cherry desserts that I put together that help me through those times. So lots of reasons why you want to eat. The answer for what you should be eating is what solves the problem. Almost always it's going to be taste, but beyond that, anything's good as long as you're not adding junk. After that, the other question that you're going to have is serving size. We said that your goal is to get however many servings per day. I forgot what number we said. The example that we use a lot is 5 servings per day. But remember, you can change that number. If you want to set a goal to have 4 fruits and vegetables every day, you can start a little bit more conservatively. I have a lot of my clients that need 10 servings of fruits and vegetables every day in order to fight off all the temptations that they face throughout the day. So if you're a big eater, if you're a big snacker, if you like big meals, you're probably going to need more fruits and vegetables, but you can sort of slide it around. Just bear in mind, the number that you're writing down is a minimum. So if you say, I got to have at least 4 a day, then know that you can always go up to 10 if you need to. Don't feel like you're stuck at that point. And if your goal is 10, you cannot go below it. You've got to have 10 every day. That's what's going to keep you on track. So set the number somewhere in that range. But once you pick that number, okay, it's 10 servings. Well, what is a serving? Well, we want to keep it as simple as possible. This is supposed to be easy. It's not supposed to be a bear on your day. So when you're looking at your fruits and vegetables, you want to keep a standard serving. I don't want you to have to look at cans and look at labels and go online and Google the serving size for fruits and vegetables. And I don't want you to get caught up in, okay, for corn, it's supposed to be half a cup, but for something else, it's supposed to be 3/4 of a cup. Well, this brand of corn says it's 5/8 of a cup, and this brand says it's 1/2 of a cup. Now you have to keep everything in line. It's impossible. All right, avoid all of that. We're going to use some standard serving sizes. I will highlight them here. Let me make sure you can read them on the screen. Looks pretty good to me. So you've got 1 cup for fruits, 1 cup for vegetables. These are your standard serving sizes. If you're ever unsure, call it a cup. Don't read the labels for serving sizes. I don't care what the labels say. You're trying to keep your life simple. 1 cup is 1 serving. So if you have 1 cup of corn, that's a vegetable. If you have 1 cup of grapes, that's a fruit. Simple, simple. There's another shortcut, just an easy way of doing this, which is 1 single piece. If you have 1 banana is 1 fruit. You don't have to chop it up and measure it into a cup. You just know it's 1 fruit. If you have 1 potato is 1 vegetable. You don't have to chop it up. You don't have to be that precise. It's 1. 1 orange, 1 apple, 1 carrot. That's 1 fruit or 1 vegetable. The exception to this is a sort of common sense if you have a piece that's bigger than usual. If you have a watermelon, that's more than 1 fruit. You're going to have to chop that one down. If you have a grape, that's too small. That's not a whole fruit. You're going to have to add a couple of grapes before you get up to 1 cup. That should be common sense. If you have 1 big giant potato, that might be the same as 2 vegetables, or you might call it 1.5 vegetables. Again, you don't have to chop it down and measure it out. You can use your own sense for this. But if you're ever having issues with what the scale is doing, I recommend that you get a little bit more precise about it. But normally you're totally fine to say, all right, this is a tiny orange. I'm going to say 2 oranges is 1 fruit. Well, this is a big apple. I'm going to call this 1.5 fruits. Okay, but in most cases, it's going to be 1 fruit. If you're ever unsure, chop it down, 1 cup, you got it. Over time, you're going to be able to eyeball that serving size. You're going to get pretty good at telling what 1 cup is. You might decide to take the shortcut and just eyeball it and say that's 1 fruit, that's 1 vegetable. I am okay with that. I'll endorse that for you. But please keep in mind, same thing I said about the eyeballing your potatoes and your apples. If you get into trouble with the scale, stop doing that. Try and be a little bit more precise with your measurement so you know exactly what's going on. Okay? This is a good time to mention before we move on. 1 cup is a standard serving, but I'm not telling you you have to eat a cup at a time. If you want to have 2 apples at once, you just ate 2 fruits. That's okay. If you want to have 5 apples at once, because for some reason it's that kind of apple-y day, I'm not stopping you. You can have more than one fruit or vegetable at a time. You can also do odd measurements. If you just want a half a cup of strawberries because you're going to make a smoothie or something like that, do that. Half a cup of strawberries is fine. Call it a half of a fruit. You don't have to mix it up like that. You can have 1.5 fruits. You can have 2 whole fruits. It's easier, I think, intellectually to keep track of your fruits and vegetables if you do it in smaller servings or standardized servings. Try and do a cup at a time. I do mine a half a cup at a time. And if I eat a whole cup or if I eat 1.5 cups, that's kind of how I keep track mentally. But nothing's saying you have to do 1 serving at a time. You can do multiple, you can do less. You have that freedom. Just make sure you're measuring them accurately. From there, we'll talk about record keeping in a little bit and measuring and what you're going to do with all of these details. All right, from there are a couple of exceptions that you need to know about for fruits and vegetables. One is avocado. One is legumes. So avocado and legumes fall into the same category of exceptions. These are a little bit higher in calories, so you want to count a smaller portion as a serving size. Instead of 1 cup, we're going to say half a cup. That's half of an avocado, or it's half a cup of legumes. That's beans, kidney beans, black beans, pinto beans. I'm not going to list out every bean for you, but half a cup of beans counts as 1 serving. I also believe that peas falls into this range. I often have my clients count peas in this range. So half of a cup of peas is 1 serving. Those are easy to remember. They're really the only major, weird exceptions. Half a cup is 1 serving size. They are a little bit higher in calories. Again, there's nothing that says you can't eat a whole cup of beans at once, especially when it gets to soup season. When I put beans into soups, I might eat two cups of beans at once, which would be 4 servings of vegetables. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Just, again, make sure that you're being accurate about the way that you're recording it, because if weird stuff starts happening on the scale, you want to know what's causing your problems. Okay? And it might just be that you're not counting properly. So you want to know what's going on. Half a cup is a serving. Then, I'm going to skip down to the bottom here. The only other exception is leafy greens. This would be lettuce, spinach, kale. If you have a leafy green, and it is a raw form of the leafy green, raw lettuce, raw spinach, 3 cups is 1 serving. These are some of the best vegetables that exist with regards to weight loss. You can eat a ton of salad before you start having to worry about what the scale is doing. 3 cups is 1 serving, so 3 cups is what you want to count when you're trying to keep track of them. Again, there's nothing that says you can't have 6 cups of salad at once. That would be 2 servings of vegetables if you wanted to do it that way. There's also nothing that says you can't have 3 cups of lettuce and 1 cup of tomato. That would be 2 servings of vegetables, and you're putting it all together in 1 salad at once. You can do a salad with several servings of vegetables pretty easily if you want to. There also isn't anything that stops you from doing half of a serving of lettuce. If you have 1.5 cups of lettuce or 1.5 cups of spinach, that's half of a serving of your vegetables there. That's okay, right? Leave yourself the flexibility. Some days you're going to do some things, some days you're going to do other things. Just make sure that you understand the serving sizes that you're having, and you want to be accurate about the way that you're recording them. But if you've got that, you're good. Those are the only exceptions. For these leafy greens, if you cook them, they shrink down. If you have cooked spinach, 3 cups of spinach, once you cook it, will only be 1 cup when you cook it. So you go back to the 1 cup rule. If you have canned spinach or frozen spinach, 1 cup of cooked spinach is a serving. Okay, so there, it's not an exception. It's only when it's raw. So every fruit and vegetable is 1 cup. The only exceptions are avocado, beans, and leafy greens. If you can remember that, you can do all your serving sizes for fruits and vegetables. There's one more thing put on this list, which is worth mentioning, and that is anytime you mash something up. So you see mashed vegetables over here, you also see mashed fruit. Potatoes, you see mashed potatoes a lot. We've been doing pureed pumpkin or squash soups where it's mashed up, pureed. You also see applesauce and other fruit purees. There's a lot of desserts that get built out of these things. All of these are cool. You're allowed to mash up your fruits and vegetables if you want to. The police are not going to knock down the door. What you need to be aware of, though, is if you have 1 cup of apples and you mash it up, you only get half a cup of applesauce when it's all said and done. So if you have applesauce, a serving size is going to be a half a cup. That's not really an exception, it's just something you need to understand about when you mash things up. If you have one potato and you mash it up, you get half a cup of potatoes. So if you're measuring your serving size for mashed potatoes, half of a cup would be one serving. Okay? The other thing to be very careful about when you do these mashed fruits and vegetables is to make sure that there's nothing added to it. If you're in control, then you know what's going in. But if somebody else makes you applesauce, or if you get mashed potatoes at a restaurant, there will be that butter, that cheese, that bacon, whatever it is. You're going to get into trouble when you start exploring those kinds of things. So be careful to make sure that if it is something that's prepared, you know what's in it, and if you can't have what's in it, you don't do it. Okay? Be in control of that. Okay. I'll also mention here avocado and legumes, because you can mash those up as well. If you mash up avocado, you get guacamole. You can have guacamole and still lose weight. If you mash up beans, you get bean dips. You might get like a refried bean dip. You might get a hummus. Those are both fine and can also be helpful for weight loss. Again, if they're prepared, there's often going to be oil and stuff put into them. So you want to find a recipe where you make them for yourself. If you don't know where to find those recipes, Google's really wonderful. Or you can check out our website, mhwonline.com. That's where I put my favorite recipes. But you can mash those up. If you're going to make your own mashes of avocado or mashes using beans, a half a cup is a serving to start. When you mash them up, you cut that serving in half. So a quarter of a cup of avocado or a quarter of a cup of legumes is what's going to be the right serving size for those. So make sure that you understand that when you're going into it. If you start having a lot of guacamole or a lot of bean dips, you're going to see your fruit and vegetable numbers get higher and higher. That could be a good thing. Or it could be an indication that you should be at some point looking for other options for sauces and dips and those sorts of things. We'll adjust that when it comes to it. Especially early on, find fruits and vegetables that you enjoy. Don't worry about making the best choice every single time. Just make sure that it's a fruit or vegetable that you're meeting your goals, and everything else we can work on over time. We will talk more about that in the next video when we talk about adjusting the plan. If you're not happy or you're not getting the results you want, we'll take a look at that in the next video. Okay, I think that that's everything that we really need to know about our fruits and vegetables. So just to recap, when it's all said and done, you are picking a number. How many fruits and vegetables are you going to have every day? All right, so you may say, for example, my goal is 5 a day. We have now set the first rule in your plan. I'm going to have at least 5 servings every day. I cannot go any lower. I absolutely can go higher if I want to. As far as which fruits and vegetables I'm going to do, it's whatever helps me reach that goal. Taste is going to be number one, but everything else I'm going to have to think about is what's going to get me through the day. And if you need things that are easy, simple, fast, portable, sweet, spicy, find those things. That's one of the reasons why support needs to be a part of this plan. Because if you need things that are sweet, but you don't know what's sweet, then you need to know where you can go to get those answers. Okay, so this should be a part of your plan. It's 5 servings. That would be 5 servings total if you pick the number 5. So 3 vegetables and 2 fruits would get you there. All 5 being fruits one day is still technically meeting that goal. Right? Day to day, you're going to be flexible about this, but you've got to get at least 5 when you do it. Hopefully that makes sense for you. Let's go on to point number 2. All right, the second part of our plan is meal replacements. And in order to talk about meal replacements, I want to bring up a resource that we looked at in one of our previous videos. Just briefly, let's take a look at this. This is a resource called the HMR Calorie Guide. And I walk you through in depth how you can read this chart. But what we've done here is put every food you would ever want to eat on a scale from 1 to 10. And you can see the numbers here. Now, I know you can't read the chart. It's very fine print. You're going to want to download a copy of this for yourself. You can get it on our website. We put everything you would want to eat on a scale from 1 to 10. As you come higher up the chart, the foods become higher in fat, higher in calories, more likely to mess up your weight loss. Okay, that's everything you need to know about this chart. right now. I explained it in much more detail in a previous video in this series. If you're on YouTube and you're watching this and you can't find out what video I'm talking about, go to the website. You'll see all of the videos one after another where you can see them listed out. Okay, the thing that I want to point out about this, and just remind you from that previous video, is that foods that fall into 1s, 2s, and 3s are the best weight loss foods. The reason why they're the best weight loss foods is because they make it very hard to gain weight. Okay, they don't necessarily make it easy to lose weight, but they make it very hard to gain weight. There's an example that I used in that previous video of sugar-free gelatin. If you get prepared like sugar-free Jell-O cups, as example. Those are very, very low in calories. It's 10 calories for one of those cups, if my memory is any good. If you ate 10 of those cups, it would be 100 calories. If you ate 100 of those cups, it would be 1,000 calories. 1,000 calories isn't enough to make anybody's weight loss stop. You still would not be gaining weight for that day, even if you ate 100 sugar-free gelatin cups in that day. That's the reason why these foods are so good for weight loss. Because who would ever eat 100 Jell-O cups in a day? Even on your worst day, with all the stress in the world, you don't care about counting calories, you don't care about portion size, you're just gonna do what you want, you're gonna go crazy on these sugar-free gelatin cups. Go for it. Good luck trying to gain weight doing that. It's really, really hard to eat 100 gelatin cups in a day. I've never tried, but I would guess my maximum might be 5 back to back. I don't really like gelatin that much. But I've never seen somebody get to the point where they've had too much gelatin. Okay? Now, medically speaking, I don't know what happens to the human body when you have 100 cups of sugar-free gelatin, so I'm not endorsing that strategy. But it's a hyperbole. You would never get to the point where you ate that much gelatin anyways, and that's my point. For foods that fall into this low-calorie range, it's really hard to gain weight. Even if you're stressed, even if you're bored, even if you're hungry, even if you're not paying attention, even if you don't care about counting calories, even if you're on vacation and you're trying to relax, it's really hard to get into trouble using these foods. So, the more of these foods you put in place, the easier your weight loss is going to be. You're not even going to have to think about it because everything is controlled for you automatically. If you only eat out of this range, you'll have a really good time losing weight on a regular basis. The only reason why that's hard is because you're limiting your variety, so you do need to dip into the other categories just for the sake of keeping things interesting. But if you could theoretically just eat out of that 1s, 2s, and 3s, you're going to have a really easy time losing weight, even if you only did that for a short period of time. That's why these foods are so incredible. When you eat these foods, the more you put in place, the more you push the other foods out of your routine automatically. Every time you're having something from here, you're not eating something else that would have been worse for you. So the more you eat these foods, the more you push these other foods out of the way, and the easier it is to guarantee then that you're going to be losing weight and making progress towards your goals. All right. If you understand that, then I'll point out now, in this 1, 2, and 3 range, fruits and vegetables are here. Isn't that crazy? Even bananas, even the starchy vegetables, the potatoes, this is the reason why fruits and vegetables were rule number 1, because they're these low-calorie foods. It doesn't have as much to do with nutrition, although yes, they are healthy for you, but most of us don't care about that. I just want to see the results that I'm looking for. These are super low-calorie foods. Every time you eat these, you're pushing something else out. No matter how many cucumbers you ate in a day, you would have a really hard time messing up your weight loss, because every time you eat a cucumber, you're pushing out something else, and you're going to get full, or you're going to get tired of eating cucumbers before you ever reach the point where you start to gain weight. That is true for almost every fruit and almost every vegetable, as long as they're prepared in a safe and healthy way, which again, we'll talk about later on in the video. There are other foods that are in this range. We talk about some of them in that previous video, but you don't need to know that right now. I do want to point out, below the fruits and vegetables, there's another category of foods that is really important, and these are meal replacements. That term might sound familiar for you because I just showed you rule number 2 is to use some meal replacements. Okay, so what are meal replacements? Meal replacements are foods that are controlled, foods that are prepared, pre-portioned, foods that you don't have to think about as much. There's a number of different versions of these, but I think the one that most people are familiar with are 100-calorie packs. If you've ever seen a 100-calorie pack of cookies or a 100-calorie pack of chips, that's a meal replacement. What that is a food for which you don't have to make the decisions. If I open up my own bag of chips, I gotta count them out. I gotta make sure I stop before I go too far. If I have a little bag of chips, once the chips is empty, my work is done. I have to stop myself from going back for a second bag of chips. But the portion is already controlled for me. So I'm more likely to be able to eat foods in a safe way without feeling out of control. Okay? That's what a meal replacement is. Now, that's the most popular example. It's the one that most people are familiar with, but it's not an example of a good weight loss meal replacement. The reason why it's not so good for weight loss is because it doesn't address this chart at all. Chips are still in this red background, 7s to 10s, high in calories. Let me see if I can find them real quick. Chips, all right? They're really high up on the chart. Chips will still get you in trouble even if they're already measured for you. However, they won't get you in as much trouble if they're measured out for you. Okay. Better meal replacements are foods that use foods in these ranges. The 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s. Those meal replacements are much better when we start talking about weight loss, because they're not using as high calorie ingredients. So not only are they portion controlled for you, so you don't have to think as much about the portion size, but they're also just using better quality foods overall. That is where the benefit in meal replacements lies. When you choose a meal replacement, you don't have to do as much cooking. You don't have to wonder if it's a good choice for you. If it's a good meal replacement, you grab it, you eat it, your work's done. You don't have to take the time that you would normally have to spend grocery shopping, looking up recipes online, making sure that the choices you're making are good choices, and making sure that you have the time and the energy to pay attention to them. This is often where a lot of us struggle with long-term weight loss. Short-term, I can do almost anything. I can buckle down into any diet for a short period of time. But if we're talking about the rest of our lives, well, it's hard to count calories, to meal prep, to portion size, and it's hard just to even think about doing those things. To even, at the beginning of the week, take the time to stop and make those decisions, especially when there's a challenge going on in our lives. And I've said that a few times in this video already. You're thinking about the worst case scenario. If I have a family member who's in the hospital and I'm trying to run errands and take care of them and I'm worrying about them, emotionally it's weighing on me, and I don't have as much time in my schedule because I still have to work full time and I have to caregive for them or take care of their kids or water their plants or feed their dog, it's a lot that's weighing on you. At that point, to try and set aside the time to look up a new recipe this week and to meal prep it, take the time to cook it and to grocery shop for it, it's hard. The most common example of this is just a late night at work. You're tired, you get off, you're hungry, you don't want to go home and put something together. That's where it becomes easy to get fast food or to rely on some kind of junk. Okay? Meal replacements help us solve all of those moments. These are prepared meals, resources that you can lean on when you don't have the time, don't have the energy. You want to make sure that the decisions you're making are good choices. If you are early on in the weight loss process, you definitely want to be using some meal replacements because it's what's going to guarantee that you start seeing progress right away. Anything else that you try to set up in your plan, you're going to have all of these decisions to make. Putting in a meal replacement, again, if it's a good one, we'll talk about that in just a second. If it's a good meal replacement, you don't have to wonder about that decision. At the end of a week, if you gained weight, and you're looking back through your records trying to figure out what went wrong, it's not because of your fruits and vegetables. And it's not because of this prepared meal. Because we gave it to you. We told you it was good. It's already controlled. If you gained weight, it's going to be something else. So you can take your energy and not have to worry about every single choice you made and zero in on the tricky bits, the other things that you were doing. Anything that you had to cook for yourself, anything that you got commercially, anything you got at a restaurant or that somebody else prepared for you. You can focus your attention on where those mistakes can be coming from. If all of your decisions are fruits and vegetables and meal replacements, you really didn't make any choices that could possibly slow your weight loss down that week. And that's really where the best, most guaranteed weight loss results come from. One of the most popular plans that I will show you in a little bit that my clients like to take on, especially in the early stages, is to not make any decisions. Let me just eat these fruits and vegetables and prepared meals. In that case, I know there's nothing I'm doing that's going to slow my weight loss down. And if something does slow it down, I can really quickly try and figure out where that might be coming from, because everything is really controlled for me. It's just like what I said earlier. If everything you eat comes from these 1s, 2s, and 3s, you're virtually guaranteed to lose weight every single week, because it's really, really hard to mess up your weight loss otherwise. Okay? Again, the one major downside of that is boredom. So, as you start to incorporate meal replacements, just like as you start to incorporate fruits and vegetables, you're going to want to think about variety quite a bit. Sauces, spices, how we want to prepare them, different ways to mix them up. Yeah, a lot of your work is done with meal replacements. They're already cooked, they're already portion sized, they're supposed to be easy to put together. But you're still going to want to think about how to make them fit your needs. If you would like a little bit of extra spice, if you would like a little bit of salt and pepper even, if that will help get it to a point where it tastes better for you, where you enjoy bringing these things on a regular basis, that's where you're going to get the best results. So I'll mention that here as we talk about meal replacements, but that's pretty critical. It's going to be critical. The more meal replacements you use, the more that you're going to want to think about that variety, because you're putting yourself in a tighter and tighter box where you're going to start feeling restricted if you don't get to explore. And again, same thing is true with fruits and vegetables. Same thing is true with everything you eat. The tighter you make your box, the more you're going to need to think about variety. So we will talk about sauces and spices in a second. We're definitely going to talk about different recipes and ideas and things you can do with your foods. There's one last thing that I want to do with regards to the meal replacements, and that is show you how to put a number down for your plan. We have generally 2 separate categories that we place meal replacements in. We have usually liquid meal replacements. These are most commonly shakes, and I'm sure that you've seen chocolate and vanilla meal replacement shakes. They've been around for decades. There's a lot of good research behind them. Separate from those, there are solid meal replacements, typically entrees. And for those, you have prepared meals typically. You'll see frozen entrees, you'll see entrees you can keep at room temperature. There are even services now where you can get your meals prepared and shipped to you fresh. And so you keep them in the refrigerator. They're never frozen, they're not canned or sealed anyway or anything like that. Those have their own, each one of them have their own downsides and upsides. But those are prepared meals. So you get chicken and rice, for example, but prepared in a healthy way and portion control. Okay. I'll also mention that a good meal replacement entree is also easy to cook when you're ready to eat, and fast to cook when you're ready to eat. So even if it's frozen or it's already portion sized, if it takes 15 minutes to thaw out, even that can be too long. I really like for my meal replacements to be less than 5 minutes. In order for me to count them as a good meal replacement, it shouldn't take more than 5 minutes. The meal replacements that we recommend the most, and the meal replacements that you can get directly from us on our website, can be prepared in 1 minute. So they're portion sized, they're easy choices, you know they're good for you, they're fast. And of course, these ones I think taste better than any I've ever tried to. With that said, you're going to set a goal for your blended shakes, and you're also going to set a goal for your entrees. The entrees are fairly intuitive. If you have an entree like a prepared lasagna, you know in your day where you might like to put that. It's usually going to be a mealtime, lunch or dinner. Nothing stopping you from having an entree for breakfast. You can have lasagna for breakfast if you want to. But it's going to be kind of intuitive. Where do you think these go throughout your day? So those are pretty straightforward. The shakes are a little bit less clear especially if you've never used shakes before. These can be a little bit more confusing, but even if you have used shakes, I found that a lot of people have used their shakes incorrectly. There are two things that you're thinking about when you're putting in shakes to your plan. The first is your sweet tooth. If you like something sweet, okay, and you can have a big sweet tooth, or you might not have a big sweet tooth at all, but if you ever like something sweet, a shake is a good way of fulfilling that role. Fruit can also be a good way of fulfilling that role, but a shake often aids in that. So for me, I'm not a big sweet tooth, but after dinner, I normally like to have something a little bit sweet to wrap up the meal. My wife is a huge sweet tooth, and so she needs meal replacement shakes way more than I do. And all throughout the day, anytime you would get a sweet craving, you might want that. You can also think about not just the day-to-day basis, but specific scenarios. If you're going to come face-to-face with cake, you're going to come face-to-face with ice cream, you're going to be put in a situation where there is something sweet, even if you're not a big sweet tooth in general. Shakes are a good way of dealing with that temptation. I can have a shake while you have that donut, and I don't go crazy and attack whoever I'm with because I'm jealous because I can't eat what they're eating. It's nicer than just sitting and watching somebody else eat. So that's the major benefit of shakes. There's another thing to think about, which is volume. Shakes, when you make them, should be big. The best shakes will be big. And what that allows you to do is keep yourself from getting hungry and fill up empty time. And both of those are pretty important. One of the main uses that my clients use shakes for is if they're going to an event. Before you go to that party, you drink a shake, so that when you get there, you're thinking clearly, you're not hungry, it fills your stomach, and it keeps you in a safe space. It just kind of bolsters your willpower. So you'll see that quite a bit. Before I go to work in the morning, I have a shake. Before I do one of my live streams, I normally drink a shake, because I know it'll be a while before I get to eat again. I know it'll keep me safe, but especially if you're going to see temptation, I drink a shake because it keeps me away from that. The other benefit, which I mentioned, is the volume in terms of taking time. When you make a shake, if it's made properly, it'll be a big shake and you can sip it over time. It'll take a little while to eat. Whereas other vegetables, depending on you, you might tend to eat faster. You might get done with your meal very quickly. It's one of the things I always ran into trouble with at restaurants. When I was trying to diet, I would get a salad and everybody else would order normal restaurant stuff, and I would finish my salad before they finished what they were having. So I had to sit and watch them eat whatever they were eating. That creates a challenge for you. So shakes can be really helpful in those situations. If you like to snack while you watch TV, it's sort of absent-minded. You can sip on your shake, you can take your time. I like to sit out in the summer and have a lawn chair outside my house, and when it's warm, I like to hang out. Shakes are really good for those circumstances. You take time with it. I also use the shakes to keep my hands busy in social situations. So if you go to a party, for example, especially if there's a buffet table, that's where I get into the most trouble. A shake is something that you can have, that you hold in your hands, that you sip on over time, and other people aren't going to bother you about, how come you don't have something to eat, or how come you're watching everybody else though? And you don't have to worry about whether or not you're going to get in trouble if you go up to that buffet table. So those are things to think about as far as whether or not you want to incorporate shakes. Most people should. Pretty close to 100% of the clients that I coach one-on-one end up using shakes. Some use a lot more, some use fewer, but almost everybody should have a certain amount of shakes every day in order to account for those different scenarios. And again, for the entrees we already covered. Most of these are going to come in meal times, but they limit more than anything the preparation. So if I do an entree for lunch, I don't have to think about what I'm doing for lunch. I know lunch is a good choice. If I'm going to cook my own dinner, that's great. I had an entree for lunch. I don't have to worry about that. I can focus all my attention on making sure I have a good, healthy dinner, and vice versa. If I have an entree for lunch and an entree for dinner, I don't have to worry about anything today. And I might want to do that every single day, or I might want to do that periodically. I have total freedom to be able to do that. That's where meal replacements will come into place. So, for this part of your plan, here's where I'm going to get confused. Here we go. Meal replacements. Just like with fruits and vegetables, it's going to be a number. So you're going to say, I'm going to have 3 shakes every day. And you might do one for breakfast, and you might do one as a snack in between lunch and dinner, and that sort of mid-afternoon you need a pick-me-up, and you might do one at the end of the day as your dessert, as your late night snack. Okay. You also might have a number for entrees, so we might say 2 entrees. Oh, I knew it was going to go down to the next line. Yuck. Oh. One more time. There we go. Okay, so you're going to have a number. 3 shakes, 2 entrees. It might be 1 shake, 1 entree. It might be 0 shakes, 2 entrees. It might be 4 shakes, 10 entrees. Okay, you have the flexibility. Keep in mind, just like with the fruits and vegetables, it's a minimum. So you have to have at least that much every day. No matter how crazy the world gets, I'll drink at least a chocolate shake every day. Okay, that's what keeps your structure in place. It's a minimum. If you don't feel comfortable committing to it, then say that the minimum is 0, and you can certainly have more if you choose to add them in. But once you commit to it, you want to follow it through. That's the most important part of this plan. Whatever plan, you follow it every day, no matter what. I recommend starting higher than you think you should start, because each of these things that you put in place creates a little cushion, a little safety net. It's pushing out something else. If I have a shake, it's not a piece of cake. It's not a brownie. It's not a donut. Each of these things that you put in place pushes something else out of the routine. If I have an entree, it's not a slice of pizza. So if you're not sure how many you need, put a little bit more than you think, just in case, to make sure that you have enough to push the temptations out of your routine. That's the goal here. But again, if you want to have more, you can try more. If you want to do fewer, you can try fewer. These numbers are flexible, and you'll see that when we do a couple of custom plans. The last thing I'll say about meal replacements is that there is a resource somewhere near this video. If you see it on our website, mhwonline.com, there's a resource where we outline how we choose our meal replacements. So there are some meal replacements that we offer. Feel free to purchase our meal replacements. Those are endorsed by Spencer himself. But there are also guidelines if you want to explore other meal replacements. There are some minimum guidelines that I think it should solve. So if you're looking at a nutrition label, or if you're looking at a frozen dinner and you're trying to guess whether or not this will be a good choice, my guidelines are there. You can follow them yourself. I also periodically will post in our resources section of the website some different meal replacements that I actually have tried and do like and am happy to endorse that you can pick up for yourself. Okay, so there are options for these. There's a particular brand that we like, and you'll see those on our website. And we sell those directly, but if not, you can find others. All right, so just to recap, as far as the diet is concerned, these are the only 2 rules that we have ever given to our clients in clinic. And we've been doing this for 11 years now, face-to-face with folks. These are the only 2 rules that I have ever used, regardless of how much weight they wanted to lose, regardless of what their health history was, regardless of what their background was. They always got a plan that utilized these 2 things, and that was enough. That was enough for us to make the progress that we needed to make. Okay, so I stress that to you. That's probably surprising. It tends to be surprising when I tell people about our program and they're outside of it. For the rest of our lives, these are the pieces that we put in place. Okay, we don't have a lot of no rules. That might come in play down here in the extra rules if there's something that you want to set off limits for yourself. But we don't focus on that. We focus on making sure that every day, no matter what, some good stuff comes in. And if every day, no matter what, some good stuff comes in, then you got to do better than you were doing before. You got to start seeing some progress. You're not just going to eat a bunch of extra stuff without it replacing other things in your life. And if you have any issues, and we'll talk about this in the next video, if you have any issues with your results, that's one thing that I recommend to my clients to focus on. Am I using these foods to replace the other foods? And if I added more of these foods, could I use that to push some of those other foods even further out of my routine? Okay, but these are really truly the 2 rules that we put in place. We haven't talked about portion size. We haven't talked about fat. We haven't talked about cholesterol, carbs, cutting stuff out. All we want to focus on first is putting the good stuff in. And I promise you, you'll start to see results, and you probably get all the results you need by putting these rules in place. Okay? If you're not, then we'll talk about that in the next video. But this is the whole diet. Fruits and vegetables, make sure that you're having some every day. Meal replacements, take some of the stress off your shoulder. Have a shake, have an entree. That's one less thing you have to make for yourself, and you know that you're safe. Then put all your attention to everything else that's going on in your life. That's especially important long term because very few people that I work with want to make this a full-time job. We have life, we have work, we have hobbies, we have kids, we have other things that we have to focus on. If I can have an entree and I don't have to plan lunch tomorrow, make my life easier. It's the reason why fast food is such a problem for Americans right now. It's just nice to have those easy options. Even as you start to incorporate other foods, we spend a lot of time on our live streams, and when I'm coaching folks one-on-one, we spend a lot of time just looking for things that are easy, that I don't have to think about so much. Okay, so consider fruits and vegetables, meal replacements. We'll go over a couple of idea plans towards the end. I'll give you a couple of different options. Okay, now at this point, I like to pause because there should be a few questions that you have about the diet specifically. And there are two that need to be answered, which both stem from the same place. And that is, this sounds really simple. I just told you this is the plan that we use for everybody. So trust me, even if it sounds simple, this is what works. But let me address it a little bit. There are two things that I think are going to come up. The first is, this sounds too simple to work. This doesn't sound like other diets that I've seen. It doesn't look like the advice that I've gotten in the past. It doesn't address a lot of the things that we've talked about. We're not doing a calorie count. We're not tracking carbs. How can this work if it is so simple? And I'll make a couple of points there. The second question that I think should be coming up is, this sounds too simple. I've heard this before. I've been told to eat more fruits and vegetables. I've been told about these shakes, these prepared meals, these frozen dinners, these programs where they give you all of the food so you don't have to count calories, and it sounds too good to be true. I've been told it before. I've done it before, and it didn't work. So why is this going to be different? How is this in any way going to change what we've already been told in the past? I think both of those are really important questions. Most people ask me those when I coach them one-on-one, so let me answer them both here. The first question, which was, I know that this is simple. It doesn't address a lot of the things we've talked about in dieting before. How can it work if it is this simple? Okay. And I tried as best I could to explain it as we were talking about it, but there's a couple of extra things that you can think about. The first is, if it isn't simple, are you honestly going to do it long term? Most people, when they start out trying to lose weight, quit before they ever reach their goal. Whatever plan they have, they don't do long term. And a major reason for that is because it's overly complicated. It starts to feel like a job. I've got to count calories. That takes time. I got to keep records. I've got to read labels. I got to look stuff up online. It's hard to do sometimes. Sometimes you can't do it even if you wanted to do it. You just don't have the opportunity to do something that's that strict. A lot of weight loss plans, which do technically work, and I don't know how to put that in quotations, they do technically work. They're not good plans because they don't work long term, because they're unsustainable long term. And the reason why they're unsustainable is because there's a lot of effort. They're more detailed than they need to be. Okay? In addition to that, I'll say, no, we don't address a lot of the things you've heard in dieting in the past. We don't talk about carbs. We don't talk about artificial sweeteners. We don't talk about genetically modified foods or gluten or hormones. The reason for that is because it doesn't matter. And I know maybe I'm going to get some flack for that from different sources. It doesn't matter. The vast majority of people, specifically Americans, because that's who I work with, but I'd say anybody who struggles with their weight, don't care. And I have worked with people explicitly who get overwhelmed with too much information. Well, this person's telling me no protein, this person's saying high proteins, this saying fat, this one's saying it's carbs. Now they're talking about cholesterol. First they said that eggs were bad for you, don't eat too many eggs. Now they're saying maybe it's not so bad, maybe you can eat a ton of eggs. It's too much information, I quit. I'm just gonna do whatever I want. I have heard a version of that dozens of times with my clients that I've worked with and with friends and family that I talk to outside. It's just overwhelming, it's too much, we don't care. I want to see results. Generally speaking, I want to be healthy. I don't want to do anything that's dangerous for me, but I don't really care about high-level goals. The vast majority of folks that I work with aren't interested in getting a six-pack. They're not trying to train to run marathons. They don't have a bodybuilding dream. They don't have a sport that they're trying to be competitive in any great degree. They just want to feel better. I want to look better in clothes. I want to get rid of some of my knee pain and my back pain. I want to come off my medicines. That stuff, you don't have to know everything there is to know about nutrition in order to accomplish. You need to know the basics and you need to be doing the fundamentals, and you'll get everything that you want for the vast majority. For people who do have a stronger goal or a more in-depth goal, I'll say, you're probably right. You're going to need to get a little bit more complicated as time goes on. If you really do want to focus on your physique, or you really do want to be athletic, or you really do want to train to do certain things, you probably will have to get a little bit more specific. You might have to pay more attention to your protein. You might have to do some more strict calorie counting. You definitely will have to do some specific exercises. We'll talk about physical activity in a second, but we're pretty loose about physical activity. We just want people moving more. If you care about getting a six-pack, you're going to have to do specific strength training workouts. And you're going to have to be consistent about it, and you're going to have to do it every day, or 3 days a week, or whatever the routine is supposed to be. You're going to have certain sets and certain reps and certain exercises you have to do. It will get a little bit more specific if you do have a tighter long-term goal. Okay, in that case, yes, this plan by itself is probably not going to get you all the way where you want to be. But even to those people, I would say, most of us don't care. But if you do care, even for you, I would say, if you can't commit to eating vegetables every day, if you can't commit to doing some kind of movement every day at a basic level, you're not going to be able to commit to one of those more in-depth plans. If you're looking for a plan that has more detail, it's not going to be worth anything if you don't follow it. So it might be a good idea to start with something simple like this, even if you do have a really strong long-term goal, because you're not going to be able to reach that goal if you can't be consistent anyways. If you can't get your basic weight under control, if you can't start eating healthier on a regular basis, if you can't put in more fruits and vegetables, it's going to be not worth your time to worry about more in-depth specific macros and things like that. That is stuff that I know a little bit about, and we'll talk with clients about sometimes, but it's often something that I do outsource. I have folks that I like to recommend my clients to if they want to do more strength training, if they want to focus on athletics or something like that, or if they want to look a certain way. You can go on, but you have to build up to it sometimes. So I'll say that. Yes, it is simple. It has to be simple or you won't follow it long term. And in addition to that, it's everything you need to know. Most people don't have goals where they're interested in accomplishing those things. The other thing that I think needs to be said is, yes, it is simple. And you may think, okay, I've seen this before, I've heard it before, it didn't work. What's going to be different this time around? And I think that's more important to address. Yeah, I would say that almost everybody has gotten the advice to eat more fruits and vegetables. There are two things that are going to make this experience different. The first is we are writing this plan explicitly simple. In the past, I would bet when you were told fruits and vegetables that you were also trying to juggle other aspects of the diet. They said, yes, eat more fruits and vegetables, but also count calories. Yes, eat more fruits and vegetables, but also don't eat the starchy ones. yes, eat more fruits and vegetables, but if you're going to have sweet potato, don't do it more than 3 times a week. Or yes, you're going to eat fruits and vegetables, but in addition to that, you're going to focus on doing this keto diet, this paleo diet, these other extra bonus rules. Okay? The more complicated it is, the harder it is to focus on that specific advice. I want you to eat fruits and vegetables. I don't want you to worry about all those other things. If you want to eat potatoes, eat potatoes. If you want to have all your vegetables and fruits be fruits today, if there's a fresh pineapple shipment that just came into town and you really want to dig into that, that's okay. I want to give you the flexibility to be able to move things around in your routine, to make these choices on your own, and to not have to worry about all that other garbage. That's the main thing that's going to make this experience different. You are specifically instructed, and I'm going to get mad at you if you don't follow this rule. You're specifically instructed not to care about those other things, not to worry about the other things. Make sure that every day you're reaching this number goal first. One of the places where I get frustrated the most when I coach somebody one-on-one is that they'll start putting these own impositions on themselves. They'll say, all right, Spencer, I know you told me to eat more fruits and vegetables. On top of that, I've been trying to keep my carbs a little bit lower. And I get visibly upset with them. Hopefully not too visibly. I try to keep it underneath the surface. But in my heart, right, in my head, my skin is crawling when somebody says that. Because that's not going to get you where you need to be. You're worrying too much about the wrong things. Because what will happen is these people will focus on this low-carb approach. It'll become too oppressive. And then they'll go and eat a cheeseburger. And it's like, if you just focused on eating the things that you were supposed to be eating and not putting so many restrictions on yourself, you wouldn't have felt like it was such a chore. You wouldn't have had to quit. You wouldn't have needed that outlet. The reason why you can't stick to this long term is because you're making it more complicated than it needs to be. Okay, so I guess this really does tie into the answer to the first question as well, but that's the main reason why this is going to be different, is that you are focusing explicitly on just this and not worrying about some of those other details. So you're not juggling a bunch of things all at once. The second answer to that question, the reason why this is going to be different, is because we are going to put a hyper focus, I'm instructing you directly, put a hyper focus on being happy, on solving the problems that are coming up. You're not just going to force yourself to eat broccoli 5 times a day so that you can check this off so Spencer will be happy. You're not just going to force yourself to eat Brussels sprouts because your mom told you they were good for you. You are explicitly going to be looking to solve your problems. Number one, that means enjoyment. You're explicitly trying to find things that taste good, things that you will enjoy, things that you look forward to. I had to try a lot of bad spinach recipes, but eventually I found one where my wife will ask me what I want for dinner this weekend, and I say, hey, please, can we have this spinach recipe? I must have tried 100 terrible spinach recipes before I found that one. But now I have that one and I look forward to it. I request it. I would eat it on my birthday. I would take it to a holiday event. It's genuinely that good to me, to my taste buds. Okay? We have to focus on that. We're not brute forcing, just making you eat these fruits and vegetables. You got a rule, you got to eat them every day. But the goal is to be doing them in different ways to find the needs that you have for your life. So again, taste is number one, but then you also are going to have to look at, if you need things that are portable, what's portable? If you need things that are easy to cook, what's easy to cook? If you need things that are frozen, if you need things you can take with you when you go camping, if you need things that you can have in the middle of the summer, whatever the particular scenario is, you're looking for the things that solve those challenges, right? If you're looking for something that you can have at work when it's somebody's birthday and they're trying to celebrate by bringing in a cake for everybody, you need a recipe that fits that need, right? You're looking for that directly. You're not just not eating and watching everybody else eat cake, and you're not just forcing yourself to eat broccoli Because that doesn't make sense. Everybody else is eating chocolate cake. Broccoli is not going to make you feel any better about that. I'm going to say it one more time, explicitly looking for stuff that works. Okay, stuff you like, that you enjoy, that you would do for the rest of your life. So yes, it is very simple. It has to be simple so that we can get all the junk out of your brain and focus on things that are going to get you the results you're looking for. It has to be simple so that you can stick to it for the rest of your life. And it has to be simple so that you can zero in on solving your challenges. Okay? So I'll stress once more, we've got 2 rules so far. 5, well, not 5. You're going to eat fruits and vegetables every day. You're going to pick a number. I have chosen 5 in this example, but the number could be 6, the number could be 10, the number could be 2. Right? Fruits and vegetables that you're going to eat every day. Okay, and keep in mind that this is a total, so it might be 2 vegetables and 3 fruits to get to 5, but it's not 5 vegetables and 5 fruits. You need that flexibility. Some days it's going to be more fruits, some days more vegetables. Okay, keep that open. The other thing that we're going to put in place are meal replacements. These are shakes and prepared meals so that you don't have to worry about them. And anything else that you eat that day, you can put all your attention towards. Okay? If you're not great at eating fruits and vegetables to start, I recommend having a lot of meal replacements. Don't worry about trying to cook chicken for yourself yet. Focus on eating these easy meals and then taking the time to make your fruits and vegetables taste good. Figure out what you need to enjoy those and what you need in order to get them on a regular basis. I would start there and do a lot more meal replacements and a lot less cooking on your own. But even if you love fruits and vegetables, if you're just trying to keep the whole process easier, I would put in a lot of meal replacements. Okay, so there's my advice. We'll do a couple of sample plans and show you what a typical day might look like once we get through the rest of these rules. All right, I know it's been a little while, but this is only the first 2 out of 6. The last 4 will come very quickly, though. Now we have physical activity, and this is the last of the specific weight loss rules. Okay, so let's take a look at what that means together. Physical activity, by definition, is movement of your body. And I'm trying to say this very carefully, all right? Exercise counts as physical activity, but physical activity is not exercise. It doesn't have to be sweaty. It doesn't have to be intense. It doesn't have to be at the gym. I want to take away your association with exercise because, again, I know that's been said in weight loss in the past. You've been told to exercise. Great. That's not what I'm trying to do for you, okay? One of my role models for physical activity has a story. He did an interview in a magazine once, and he said when he started out, his only rule was that he went to the gym every day. And he would go to the gym every day, and especially early on, he would go in, he would sit down, they had free coffee, he'd get a cup of coffee, and he would watch other people. Some days he didn't do anything at all. He went there, he sat, he watched them, then he came home. Over time, he would see people doing something that looked interesting, and then he would try that out. And if he thought that it was fun, he would do it a little bit more, and then maybe he'd go home and do some research and try and dig a little bit deeper and explore it. If he tried it and he didn't like it, he never had to do it again. Nobody was forcing him to do it from the very beginning. And over time, then, he fell in love with certain aspects of physical activity, and he learned to enjoy the things that made sense for him. And he is the most in shape. He's my idol within that world. That is my advice to you guys. Your goal is to find things that you're going to do on a regular basis and all the time and for the rest of your life. It is not to exercise. It is not to make it a full-time job, and it is not to force yourself to do it. Again, we're going to set a rule that you have to do it on a regular basis, but that's not the mentality that you want, where you're forcing yourself to do it. What you're trying to do is solve the problem and make it happen. Okay, so physical activity, well, let me fill that in a second. Physical activity, by definition, is movement. It's anything that gets your body moving. It doesn't have to be sweaty. It doesn't have to be intense. So yes, exercise counts, but dancing counts. Taking a walk counts. Playing with your kids counts. Parking at the back of the grocery store parking lot and walking an extra minute to get inside counts. Taking the stairs instead of the elevator counts. Doing things just with your upper body, even if you're sitting down, upper body stuff counts. Bowling counts. Anything that you do that gets you moving counts. Even if it's just a little bit, even if it's just one part of your body, even if it's only for a short period of time. You want to be moving. When you're moving, you're forcing your body to use the energy that it has. You're saying, hey body, get this fat off of me, take that energy and put it out here into the world. Okay? That's the reason why you're doing physical activity. Now, I think you can lose weight with no physical activity at all. You may have some friends, you may know some people who claim to have lost weight with no physical activity at all. I'm not going to argue that. It is possible. You cannot lose weight quickly, and you cannot be successful long term without physical activity, especially if you have a particular goal. If you're trying to look good in clothes, being active is going to make you look better than just losing the weight through diet alone. You're going to have a better looking body if you do some activity, if you move. If you're trying to get rid of your knee pain, making your legs stronger so that your knees don't have to hold up all that weight by themselves, building some muscle is going to take away your knee pain. If you're trying to be able to go up and down the stairs without being out of breath, doing something physical is going to strengthen your heart, strengthen your lungs, make it easier to do those things. You cannot reach your goals without some kind of physical activity. And you cannot be successful long-term without physical activity. Okay? We've mentioned this a few times in this video series, but there are things that you can do short-term which will result in a weight loss, but that are unsustainable or that are impossible long-term. Doing it without physical activity is one of those things. You can lose weight. And in fact, I lost my first 50 pounds without specifically trying to do any physical activity. I did end up doing more physical activity through that process, but I didn't have any physical activity goals during that period. I focused entirely on my diet. You can absolutely do it. But when you get to your goal, and especially when you start thinking about expanding your food horizons, you want to start cooking more, you want to start going to restaurants more, in order to be able to do the balancing that you need to do, you're going to need physical activity. Okay? I don't want to beat you over the head with it, but you have to. Okay? The people that I get in the most conflict with when I coach them are people who have some kind of limitation. So I think it's especially important to mention that here for those reasons. The people that I have to work with more closely, are usually people with physical limitations. They have bad knees, bad back, they're in a wheelchair, they're on oxygen, they have shoulder problems or something like that. These are the people that often fight the most about physical activity, or they have a lot of weight to lose. And when you have 100 or more pounds to lose, I mean, honestly, when you have 30 or more pounds to lose, but especially if you have 100 or more pounds to lose, there is pain. It is hard to do things that put pressure on your knees, things that push you through that. I want to be super clear about the way that I say this, and I want to be very sensitive about the way that I say this. You have to do physical activity. You cannot get away from it. But the physical activity doesn't have to be exercise. Okay? I'm stressing both of these points. You do have to do it. I have a picture of a client on my website who's in a wheelchair, and it's one of my absolute favorite pictures. His name is Garrett. He had to do physical activity, just like everybody else had to do physical activity. I've got people who came in crutches or in wheelchairs or on oxygen tanks. I've seen it all. You have to do physical activity. I promise you, you have to do it. You can try it without. I've had plenty of clients who did. You won't be successful long term. You need it. Okay, but just like with the fruits and vegetables, and just like with the rest of the diet, when you're starting to do physical activity, our main goal is going to be to solve the problems that we have. Okay, we talked about this with fruits and vegetables. The number one problem you have with fruits and vegetables is finding ones that you like. The number one problem you're going to have with physical activity is finding ones that you enjoy. Okay, ideally, we want to find something that's fun, but then just below that, we have all of these other needs for our physical activity. I want something that's quick. I want something I can do at home. I want something that's not going to cause me knee pain. I want something that I can do with my friends or my wife that she'd like to participate in. I want something that isn't boring. I don't like to be on the treadmill and staring at the wall for any length of time. I also really like things that are short. I like things that are 1 minute, 2 minute, 5 minute maybe. The vast majority of my activities, I like things that are done in short intervals like that. I want something I can do at work. If I have a little bit of break time here, if I get up from my desk for a little while, how can I do some movement there? Or if I have a little bit of time left over on my lunch break, how do I squeeze activity in there? Okay? You have needs from your activity. One of them can certainly be, I want something that doesn't hurt my back, right? And should be. Let me stress that. You have to do the activity. You don't have to be in pain. You shouldn't be in too much pain. So it should be a priority there. You got to figure out what those things are. Okay? And again, I'm going to get down to it. The last thing I want you guys to consider when you're making this plan is, where do you go to get help? Again, we'll talk about that in a second. But if you don't know what activities you can do that get you moving, that don't hurt your back, then you need to find where you can get that information. You need resources for that. And that's where the support will come in play. Okay, but for here, let's set a goal for physical activity. We've talked about it long enough. You have to do it. I'm sure by now you're nodding along. You say, yep, Spencer, I trust you. I'm with you. Let's do physical activity. Here's our physical activity resource. Okay? When we do physical activity, when we set the rule for physical activity, it's going to be exactly the same as the fruits and vegetables and exactly the same as the meal replacements. It's a minimum. Every day, no matter what, if the world turns upside down, I can promise to do something, right? If you say, all right, the world is crazy, the least I can do is take a 5-minute walk today. I can't promise everything, but I'll get up from my desk and I'll walk for 5 minutes. That's the kind of plan that we're looking to put together. This is my baseline. This is a plan that I don't have to cheat on. I don't have to take days off because it makes sense, because it is something that is sustainable without being too aggressive. Okay? So let me zoom in on this resource a little bit, show you how we're going to set this. All right. For physical activity, as opposed to the diet, we like to set weekly goals. Some days you're not going to be able to do as much physical activity. Some days you're going to be able to do more. So I want to let you have the flexibility. You can do more physical activity on the weekends if that's easier for you than on the weekdays. If you're on vacation, you might really pump and get a lot of activity because you want to go sightseeing or snorkeling or something. You have the freedom to be a little bit more flexible. So we set weekly goals instead of daily goals. And the number that you're going to put down for physical activity is a calorie goal. I want to burn this many calories over the course of the week through physical activity. All right. So you can see here, there's a recommended, we like 2,000 calories burned per week. That number is very specific. There's a lot of research that went into that number. It is a good number for weight loss, but it is the magic number for health benefits. When you start talking about preventing cancer and heart attack and stroke, when you start talking about benefits in terms of mental health and relieving depression, when you start talking about long-term and especially old age and longevity, you keep coming back to this same number. And you've heard it before, that doctors say 30 minutes a day. There's this standard amount of physical activity that seems to be the sweet spot for making sure that you get the most amount of physical benefit. So that's where this 2,000 number comes from. But when we're talking about weight, you might want your number to be higher than that if you want to lose weight faster. You might want to start more conservatively if you feel like you need to build up into it. This is not written in stone, but this is the number that you're going to be writing down. How many calories can I burn per week minimum? When the world turns upside down, I can still do something. Okay, and I'll share with you a story from one of my coaching this week. I had a guy came in, he said, my physical activity was lower this week. I didn't get to the gym as much. And I said, okay, well, why didn't you get to the gym as much? And he said, well, we were snowed in, and I had to shovel out my driveway, and I had to shovel out my parents' driveway, and I had to shovel out my uncle's driveway. And I said, well, that's all physical activity. You didn't count that towards your total for the week? And he said, no. Oh, I guess I did meet my goal anyways. That's a supreme example of what we're talking about in terms of physical activity. The goal is when there's a blizzard and you got nowhere to go, and again, the world is upside down, you can still get your physical activity. It's just about finding ways to push that movement. So anything that you do gets you moving is going to count. All right, we're setting a number. How many calories do you want to burn per week minimum? 2,000 is a great number to start. I think it's the minimum number that you want to build up to. Even if you choose to start smaller, try to get up to 2,000 per week over time. And bear in mind, especially if you want to eat cheeseburgers long term, you probably want it to be even higher than that. Okay, how do we calculate this? Well, there are apps that you can use that will track your physical activity for you. You punch in your activity, they'll tell you how many calories you did. If you're more tech savvy, there's websites you can go to, there's things that you can use online, there's lots of resources for that. I like to recommend, and actually, I think it's here. Oh no, it's not, it's on this one. I like to recommend the HMR app. This, I think, is one of the easiest resources for record keeping. We'll talk about this a little bit more when we start talking about record keeping. But there's an app, it has this symbol. You'll find it on iPhone as well as Android. And in this app, if you can see it a little bit here, but not super in detail. If you want to track your records throughout the day, you can keep track of everything you're doing. There's a spot for your, well, we'll talk about this more in a second. But there's a spot here for physical activity, which I'll show you. It's got a calculator. When you click on this, you tell it, I did 5 minutes of activity. It tells you how many calories you burned. All right, if you want to do it easy and tech savvy, that's the way to do it. I have always liked pen and paper myself. So this chart, this resource that we were looking at, is a way to calculate that for yourself with pen and paper. All right, I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. All right, on the left-hand side, you find your weight. Let's say I'm 200 pounds, or let's say I'm 300 pounds. Find your weight on the side. On the top, you find your activity. This is important to understand. If you are working harder and you're breathing heavier, you're going to burn more calories. We'll talk about that in just a second. If you're working harder and you're breathing heavier, you're going to burn more calories. So, you find your activity here, and based on where it falls, you'll know how many calories you're burning. All right? Most people are in this medium intensity. Most people are doing a standard walk, not putting any extra effort into, just normal walking outside, enjoying the sights. It says mowing, which I never noticed actually. Like a push mower in your yard. Tennis, weightlifting. We see a lot of some kind of strength training. It could be weightlifting, but it could also be machines. It could be push-ups, sit-ups, body weight things. All right. And then we see a lot of bike riding. So most people are going to be in this range for most of their activities. If you're unsure, use this range. Higher intensity things are jogging, things where you're pushing a little bit heavier. Very high intensity is running, things where you're moving and sweating and feeling it. But the best judge is breathing. How heavy are you breathing? That's how you know you're moving more vigorously. Okay? But a standard walk will be here if you're unsure. Then you have a jog and a run. Low intensity is normally either really, really light work, or it's the type of activity that you do in over a long time, but in short intervals. For example, softball is here. If you play softball, there's a portion of the game where you're sitting down, then there's a portion of the game where you're standing up, then there's a portion of the game where you're running. So for short intervals, it's really intense while you're running, but then a lot of the time you're sitting down. When you're gardening, you may gather up your tools and then sit in one flower bed for a little bit and do your gardening. So you are moving, but then there's a period where you're just sitting still, and there's a period where you're not moving very fast. Okay, bowling is one of my favorite examples. Bowling is an activity, and you're going to bowl, and you're going to get up, and you're going to sit down. but then a good part of it, you're just sitting down. For those things, you can count the whole hour that you're bowling, but you're going to count it low because there's a lot of it where you're not doing much, even if there's a short part where you're doing a lot. So that's usually what low intensity is. Sometimes it's something that's really, really light, but I can't even come up with an example off the top of my head because walking, a standard like, I'm just going to the grocery store walking around is here. Walking with the assistance of a grocery cart is here. This is not intense at all. This is very, very light stuff that's here. This stuff is almost always stop and go type activities. All right, so if you're unsure, use this medium range, but you can go higher, you can go lower. All right, that said, if I'm 120 pounds and I'm walking, then I can find where they meet. Walking 4 calories per minute. And here we can zoom in again. Walking burns 4 calories per minute if I'm 120 pounds. Okay, this is a standardized measurement. We don't separate men from women. We don't worry about what your body composition is. I wouldn't stress over it. Again, if you have a very particular long-term goal, you might need to know that stuff. But I have a lot of folks that have goals of, playing sports and, trying to look good and work on their physiques and those sort of things that still don't need to know those specifics. All you need to know is, am I doing more activity this week than last week? And if you can measure that, that's good. You don't have to be so tight and have the exact numbers, especially because you're not counting the calories that you eat. So you're not trying to balance out your food with your physical activity. This is just a way of measuring how much you're moving. Okay, so let's put it that way. So this person is burning 4 calories per minute. What that means is if they walk for a minute, they burn 4 calories. If they walk for 5 minutes, they would do 5 times 4, which would be 20 calories that they just burned. If they walk for 10 minutes, 10 times 4 would be 40 calories that they burned. Okay, you can break this down in any interval you want, and then you just do the multiplication. Now, I mentioned earlier that higher intensity activities do burn more calories, and the main benefit of that is that you reach your goal faster. Okay, so I'll use an example down here just so the math is easy. If I'm 300 pounds and I'm walking, here I'll highlight the whole row. If I'm 300 pounds and I'm walking, I'm burning 10 calories per minute. If I'm trying to burn 2,000 calories per week, that means that I have to get 200 minutes in that week, which is about 30 minutes a day, almost exactly 30 minutes a day. If I jog, if I run, stair climber was in this range, or jump rope is one of my favorites. Jump rope, for the same amount of time, it's 21 calories per minute, as opposed to 10 calories per minute. So to get to 2,000 calories per week, if that's your number goal that you've set, then it is less than 100 calories, or sorry, less than 100 minutes per week, which would be about whatever 100 divided by 7 is. 15 minutes per day, give or take. So if you'd like to do all your activity as fast as possible, try and do some intense stuff. I had someone that I worked with early on who saw jump rope over here, and they figured out, oh, I can do 15 minutes of jump rope a day, and that's it, I'm done. They didn't have to do any other walking. They didn't have to worry about fitting other stuff into their routine. They just focused in on that high intensity number. So they spent their time building up their endurance so they could jump rope longer and longer. When they started, they jump rope maybe 20 seconds at a time, and then they'd take a break and come back and do more. But over time, they built it up so that they could jump rope 15 minutes in a row. And then they didn't have to worry about their physical activity. They know that they got that every day, and their minimums were taken care of. If they wanted to do more, they could always do more. Keep that in mind about physical activity, just like the diet. If you want to do more, you can always do more. But they knew that they had that minimum baseline in place. Walking would take 30 minutes a day, which isn't bad, but it's not as nice as 15 minutes a day. Okay, so if specifically you're trying to balance out time normally the answer is to try and do some things that are more intense. If you feel like you have a busy day and you don't have much time in your routine, or if you just don't want to spend that much time. I'd rather spend my time playing video games. I'd rather spend my time with my friends, with my family. I'd rather not spend it on exercise if I don't have to. So if I can do it quickly, that's my goal. Let me try and do something that knocks it out. Okay. Separate from that, though, our number one focus with physical activity is finding things that solve the problems. So if I am not in shape and can't do high intensity things, then I need to do lower intensity, and it might take me a little bit longer time. If I am in pain when I try and do high intensity things, then I might need to do lower intensity things, and it might take more time. If I don't have the physical capability, if I sprain my ankle and, for the next couple of weeks I can't use my ankle, I might have to do lower intensity things. So usually there's a balance that happens in here between how much time do I want to spend and how intense do I want to work out. But the thing that I cannot stress enough is that you don't have to do any specific activity. It's a number. Whatever you can do that gets you moving, that helps you make progress towards that number is great. Now, I'll do one more thing for you, which I think is important to illustrate, and that is if I'm trying to get 30 minutes a day, that's going to get me 2,000 calories per week. For this person, it's almost exactly 30 minutes a day. If that's my goal, I'm telling you, I promise you, it doesn't matter if you do 30 minutes all at once or if you do 15 minutes. It still adds up. If you do 5 minutes, it's also 30 minutes. And if you do 2 minutes, it's also 30 minutes. We could do this all day. If you want to break it down smaller and smaller and smaller, it's okay. The vast majority of my activity personally is 2-minute activity. I get out, I take a lap around my building, I come back in. It gives me an excuse to get up from my desk and take a break. It doesn't mess up my productivity here at work or mess up my motivation. Doesn't get intense, doesn't get sweaty where I feel uncomfortable for the rest of the day because I just worked out. It doesn't drain my energy in the same way that going to the gym does. I like lifting weights, but especially when you do legs, squats, and deadlifts and stuff, I'm tired for the rest of the day. Legs shoot my whole day and wreck me. And then I'm sore the next day, and it has a ripple through the rest of the week. Doing 2-minute things doesn't do that to you. So the majority of my activities end up being small things. And the majority of my clients' activities end up being small things. I mentioned earlier, walking an extra minute when you go to the grocery store, taking the stairs instead of the elevator. You're going to be inclined, especially if you've ever dieted before, you've ever been in the weight loss world before, you're going to be inclined to ignore those things. You're going to say, that's not a big deal. I took an extra chip to put away my laundry today. That doesn't count. That's just normal stuff I have to do anyways. The people who are the best at doing activity are the ones who are doing normal stuff. They're not going to the gym every day. They're active in their lives. They're taking the time to do things physically so that they don't have to do the exercise or formulate it as a formal activity. Those will always be the people who are the most successful long term. You shouldn't have to think about it. You should just be active. Now, at the beginning, you're going to have to think about it. You got to force yourself to do it because you're not used to doing it. You haven't been paying attention to it. You haven't tried to. But when you get this up to the right level, there should be a part of it which flows, which makes sense and can happen consistently. And that might end up being you falling in love with the gym. And it might end up being you having a bike ride on the weekends where you just burn a lot of calories all at once. But most likely it's going to end up being, at least in small part, a 10-minute jazzercise video that you put on in the morning and a 10-minute yoga session that you do at the end of the day and 5 minutes on your lunch break and 2 minutes when you get up to go to the bathroom. Every time you go to the bathroom, you take a little bit longer route to get there, or you do a couple of push-ups before you go to the bathroom. It always comes from these little things. If I drop somebody off for an appointment at the doctor's office, instead of waiting for that whole appointment, I take a quick short walk and come back and meet them when they come out. Those are the types of things that end up getting the best results. Little things that add up throughout the day into one big thing. So if there's anything that I can encourage you on the physical activity front, it is do a bunch of short stuff and add it up and keep track of it and see where you fall. And do more of it. And look for the opportunities throughout your day to say, yeah, I'll pick that up. Yeah, I'll carry that for you. I'll walk that out. I'll take a quick walk before I get back to my desk. Look for the short things. Take advantage of them. And that's especially true if you have physical limitations. If you can only walk for 5 minutes, walk for 5 minutes. If you can only do 2 push-ups, do 2 push-ups. And tomorrow, try and get 2 more. And eventually, maybe you get to 3. And that's the way that these things build. So I'll stress all of that here. But as far as this chart goes, that's what you need to know. Find your weight on the side. If I'm 180 pounds, then I will move on over. And if I'm walking, I'm burning 6 calories per minute. So then I know. If I want to get to 2,000 calories in a week at 6 calories per minute, I'm going to have to do some division. Off the top of my head, what is that? 50 minutes a day, give or take. So then you know. All right, 50 minutes a day is my goal. Let me figure out how I'm going to break that up. And over time, you find it. Okay? But just like with the fruits and vegetables, let me emphasize very, very strongly, you need a number. Okay? You need a number. It is a minimum number. No matter what, I'm going to get that. Shoot. I knew it all wouldn't fit on one line. You need a number. It's a minimum number. No matter what, I'll burn at least as many calories every day or every week. Leave it flexible. Some days you can do different activities. Some days you can do more activities. Some days you can do less activity. If you have a problem, take the time to solve it. If you're going to do physical activity every week, what is it that you need in order to be happy with that? What is it that you would enjoy as far as physical activity? And what is it that you're capable of doing within your schedule and your routine and your life? All right. We'll talk about the topic of enjoyment a little bit more and what sort of options you have in the next video for anyone who is struggling with their plans or who wants to change their plan in some way. We'll talk about that. All right. Now that's it. You now know everything you need to do in order to lose weight. Eat some fruits and vegetables. Put some meal replacements in place so you don't have to think about them. Get your physical activity. Okay? Everything else is going to be pretty good. And will work itself out where it needs to. The last 3 rules are a little bit less tangible. They're a little bit harder to understand the importance of if you haven't seen the research, if you haven't been a coach, and you haven't seen 1,000 other people try and lose weight. If you're only in your own head, it's really hard to understand how important these things are. But when you see real people who have failed and real people who have succeeded, it becomes really obvious how important these things are. So let's take a look at it. Number 1, you need a goal and you need a way of tracking that goal. Okay, the tracking is the important part of this. So the goal itself, I have a feeling I'm going to have to move my big head in a second. The goal itself is very simple. It's what do you want to accomplish, okay? And for most people, it's a weight goal. So you say, all right, I want to lose 50 pounds. That's my goal, okay? And that may sound unnecessary or obvious. Of course, I have a goal, but a lot of people don't put this into words before they get started. They just say, I'd like to lose some weight. Or they have a vague reason for wanting to lose weight. And I think that's more important than the number. Is what are you trying to accomplish? If your goal is to feel better, I get that response a lot. Well, what does that mean? Do you want to feel better physically? You want more energy? You want to sleep better at night? You want to get rid of your knee pain? Do you want to feel better mentally? You want to be more confident? You want to feel like you have more control, more willpower? Do you want to feel less depressed and more optimistic on a regular basis? Do you think that the weight loss is going to affect that in some way? Do you want your clothes to fit better? Is that like the central goal? I want to get back into those leather pants when I was in that Kiss tribute band? Is that the thing that you're trying to do? What exactly do you want to accomplish? It will always probably have a number attached to it, but there's something that you need to be able to monitor. And that's the important bit of this, is what's my goal? Can I track my progress towards this goal? If I'm trying to lose 50 pounds, I can weigh myself and I can check to make sure that I'm on track. If I'm trying to get into a smaller clothing size, I can buy a new pair of pants once a month and I can see if that pair of pants fits me. If I'm trying to come off my medicines, I can visit my doctor once every 3 months and see if they'll adjust my medicines. If I'm trying to have better blood pressure, I can take my blood pressure periodically. Right? Whatever the goal is that you have, you should be able to monitor it. If your goal is to reduce your pain, well, maybe you keep track of how many painkillers you take. Or maybe you keep track on a scale of 1 to 10 every day. I record how much pain I'm in. And over time, you can see if those recordings are getting better or worse. Same thing for the mental health side of things. On a scale of 1 to 10, how depressed am I today? And over time, am I making progress towards that? Are those numbers getting better, in my opinion? Okay? It doesn't have to be strictly tangible. It doesn't have to be strictly measurable, but it does have to be a goal that you can track. That's the important bit here. At a bare minimum, we recommend number goals. And you can change this, by the way, but if you want to start and say, all right, I want to lose 20 pounds, and if I reach that goal, then I'll set another goal. Or if you say, I want to lose 50 pounds, if I reach that goal, we can adjust it. You can also bring it down. If you say, I want to lose 100 pounds, and you get like 80 pounds in, and you say, no, I've got everything that I wanted, I don't need to lose that last 20, right? Nothing's holding you to it. But a number goal is really nice, and it's also really easy to monitor weekly. That's really helpful. When you have a goal and you check it every day, it might drive you crazy and it might become obsessive, and it also might not be helpful. If you're trying to lose weight, you can check your weight every day, but I promise you there will be days where you were perfect and you're just holding some extra weight because you haven't gone to the bathroom yet, or because it's that time of the month, or because you had some extra salt this week. That kind of stuff can happen all the time. So a goal that you check every day is often not helpful because you won't change every day and it becomes obsessive and you get into your own head. If you have a goal that you check once a month, then a lot can go wrong in between checking. If you don't check it often enough, you can get real off track. Just for example, if you only weighed in once a month, you can gain 20 pounds in a month. And you're not going to know where it came from because a whole month has gone by. If you weigh once a week, then you can see, 3 weeks I lost weight, 1 week I gained weight. You can zero in a little bit more closely on where your challenges might be. So monitoring once a month or more often is often not good enough in a lot of cases. Medications can be that way. Seeing improvements to your blood sugars, for example. You might not get blood work, once every 6 months. Well, a lot can go wrong in 6 months. You could lose 100 pounds in 6 months, or you could be way off track in 6 months. So not checking your goal often enough can be a problem as well. Checking it too much is its own problem. The sweet spot tends to be a week. So I think you can have multiple goals, and you should. You should track all your goals. If you want to feel better and move easier and breathe easier and get a 6-pack and do whatever you want to accomplish, track all your goals. But I would recommend for this piece of the plan, setting a goal that you can monitor weekly. And it should be changing and it won't become obsessive. Okay? That's a weight goal. How much weight do you want to lose? And then how often are you going to check it? So 50 pounds, check weekly. All right, I'm aware that it is now behind my head here in the recording. It says check weekly. I'll move my head up top, but I have a feeling as soon as I do, I'm going to switch to another screen where I need to move it back down. Okay. That's it for this rule. It was a lot easier to explain that one than the physical activity, for example, but that rule is critically important. You need a goal, and you need to be monitoring your progress towards that goal. Because who cares about the number if it doesn't mean anything? If you don't think your life is going to improve by losing weight, what are you doing this for? Don't change. Keep eating what you're eating. Keep being happy. Keep living the way you live. If you don't think something's going to get better in some way, don't do it. And don't care about the number on the scale if you don't know what it's going to connect to. Do this only if you think there's going to be some improvement. That's why this is so important. You need to know what we're working towards, and you need to make sure that you're making progress towards it. If you are not making progress towards it, then it's time to look at your plan again. It's time to ask questions, maybe change the plan, maybe start all over from scratch. But something needs to be adjusted if you're not seeing the progress that you want to be seeing. Okay? One of the things that happens often is I'll work with somebody, we'll get to their goal, and 6 months later they'll come back in and they've gained some weight back. And I always, try and grill what happened. Why do you think you gained this weight back? Where did it start? And it always starts because they stopped looking at the scale. Right? I was doing pretty well. My weight stayed the same for 6 months. I had everything really under control. I stopped weighing myself so often. And over time then, when you're not paying attention, it's easy to let things slip and not realize what's happening. Or to be in denial and to know what's happening, but to try and ignore it. Have a goal, check it weekly. Record keeping. All right, record keeping is a little bit more interesting to talk about and a little bit more complicated. Record keeping is going to come hand in hand with the goal tracking. Okay? The point is, you're keeping track of whether or not you're making progress to your goal, and at the same time, you're keeping track of what you're doing. And if those don't line up, if you're not making progress towards your goal, then you can go back and look at your records and figure out where you want to go from there. Okay? If you are not keeping track of your goal, then you don't know that you need to make changes. And if you are keeping track of your goal, but you're not keeping records, then you get in trouble because you don't know where to make changes. I can see my weight's going up, but I don't know what to do because I have no track of what I've been doing. All you can do at that point is guess. You can say, well, I feel like maybe I haven't been doing enough exercise, or I think maybe I've been eating too many cheeseburgers. I'm not sure. I didn't think I was, but looking at the scale now, I kind of feel like maybe that's what it was. You can say, I think I'm not getting enough vegetables, or maybe I'm cooking my vegetables with the wrong spices and things. Maybe I'm drinking something I shouldn't be drinking. It all becomes guesswork. And without fail, if somebody doesn't have records when I'm working with them, they always blame some aspect of a previous diet. They'll say, I don't have records, but I think I've been having too many calories. Or I don't have records, but I've been maybe having more carbs than I should. And I'll reflect onto them, hey, I never told you to count calories. I never told you to have too many carbs. Why are you worrying about carbs when we weren't record keeping that in the first place? That wasn't our goal. That always happens when somebody doesn't have records. They'll say, well, maybe it's too much red meat. And it's like, look at the rules that we put for diet over here. I never told you not to have red meat. That wasn't one of the rules that we put in place. But because they don't know what's been going on, because they don't have any records at all, we just start guessing. We just start thinking, well, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. I've heard about this in the past. Maybe I'm eating too late at night. I hear that one a lot. Maybe I'm not eating on the right schedule. Maybe my breakfast, I should start eating more for breakfast. And it's like, we wrote this whole plan together. We followed it for 6 months. You lost 100 pounds. I never told you that you couldn't eat at night. So you're putting new rules in place that were never there in the first place because you have no records. Okay? And maybe I'm venting a little bit because I don't have anybody to talk to about this, but it's one of those things as a coach that just causes that little bit of frustration. I see it all the time. You don't know what's happening because you don't keep records. And I'm going to tell you with 100% honesty, when I fall off track, I don't keep records. And I don't know why I've fallen off track because I don't have records. And I promise you guys, I've got the education. I know what I should be doing and not be doing. I've seen what works and what doesn't work. I coach you guys to do it, but I can't keep track of myself if I don't have those records there. And I do the same thing. I have the same kind of guesswork, and I'm trying to figure it out. I'm a little bit more focused because I know what not to get distracted by, but it's still, it's the same thing, no matter who you are. If you aren't seeing the results you want, you need records to be able to try and make an adjustment, to be able to look in there and say, okay, here's what I've done. Now here's what we need to do differently. Okay, so there's record keeping. And then as a part of that, it's what am I doing with the records? Let me try and address that here. All right, here I have an example of a page of full records. This is an actual client record that I had coached in the past. It's an example of what a full day full of records is. I'm going to zoom out so you can see it, but before I do, I want to preface it. We have mentioned several times throughout this video that one of the reasons we struggle long term is because it is too much work. Counting calories is too hard. Checking carbs is too hard. It's record keeping. I'm telling you, you need to keep records, but I've also told you that record keeping is annoying and we don't like to do it. So we have to figure out how we can keep those two statements aligned. Yes, you have to keep records, and no, you don't want to do too much work if you don't have to. Knowing that, these records better be simple, and they better be easy to do, or we're not going to do them. Okay? Let me also say that we've made the statement all throughout the day's plan that the plan you're putting together is the worst case scenario. If I have my whole life turned upside down, right? Let's say I just got into a new relationship and we're in this honeymoon phase and we're dating and I'm happy to be with her. I'm not thinking about calories. I don't care about the scale. She likes me for me. She doesn't care what I look like. It's this beautiful Disney princess image of a relationship. It's this lovely, beautiful, wonderful thing. Okay? I'm not going to want to count calories through that. Okay? We're going out to restaurants together. I want to show her a good time. I don't want to look like a weird guy because I'm on a diet and I'm trying to lose weight. I'm trying to impress her. We just started going out. How do we rectify that? How do we answer that? It's the worst case scenario. In this example, maybe the best case scenario, but maybe a little bit more negative. If I'm going through, there's a death in my family, and I'm depressed, I don't want to count calories. I maybe even have some kind of self-destructive thoughts where I'm actively trying to sabotage. I refuse to do the work that I'm supposed to be doing in order to lose weight. Those are the times where you need things that are simple, that are straightforward, that don't take as much thought, and that you don't have the ability to talk yourself out of. Okay, so we said, for example, with fruits and vegetables, the worst case scenario, no matter what, I can still eat a vegetable every day. Right? That's a promise I can make. The worst case scenario, no matter what, I'll make one of these chocolate shakes. It's delicious anyways. I love chocolate. If it's a good choice for me, keeps me on track, I'll do it. I'll eat one of these prepared meals so that I don't have to cook lunch. I'm depressed. I didn't want to cook lunch anyways. The worst case scenario for physical activity, I'll get out of bed and I'll do some toe touches. I'll do a little bit of stretching. I'm not even going to breathe heavy. Like the worst case scenario, on my lunch break, I'll take a quick 5-minute walk. You're not going to get much more than that, but that's the worst case scenario. That's what we've been planning this entire time. Okay, for record keeping, same thing. The worst case scenario, if everything goes upside down, the least I can do is write down what I'm eating, write down what I'm doing for physical activity. That's the worst case scenario. Okay? No calorie counts, no details, no reading labels. I'm not measuring things explicitly. Just write it down. That's the worst case scenario. So let's take a look at what this looks like. Here's an example of a full plan. And this is someone that's using a lot of meal replacements, by the way. This person is actually not doing any cooking for themselves right now. They're just doing shakes and entrees and prepared meals. That plus fruits and vegetables. Okay. So here's an example of what their records look like. They wrote down they had a shake, they put a banana in it. That banana counts as one fruit. You don't even have to do this part, but they did that because it made it easier for them to keep track of everything. They wrote down they had a chocolate shake and they put coconut extract in it. They wrote down they had a turkey chili with carrots. Okay, and this is a turkey chili entree. It's not a recipe they had to prepare. It's a made turkey chili. They wrote down they had a shake. They put Crystal Light flavored water in it. Okay, that's the records, guys. That's the whole records, and I need you to accept that that's the bare minimum. Worst case scenario, I'll write down what I ate. Okay, this is a paper version of the records, but there is a way to keep it in your phone. There are other apps that you can use if you want to keep track of it in an organized app. A lot of times I use my notepad, or if I don't have access to my records, I will text my wife and I'll say, here, I ate broccoli. And then she'll get this text in the middle of the day and she knows it's part of my record keeping. What you need, at the bare minimum, is just to know what you did. Now I'll point out here what's missing. No calorie counts. They didn't write down portion size. Notice for the blueberries, they just said one fruit. We know from earlier in this video that that means 1 cup of blueberries. But that's dead simple record keeping. That's another reason why we use standard serving sizes. It's because it makes the record keeping simpler. Potato. How much potato? Well, they didn't write it here, but we know it's 1 cup. They did write 1 cup of green beans, which I think is crazy, but I would have just wrote green beans. They did write 2 cup carrots, but I would have just wrote 2 carrots. And I know that's 2 servings of carrots that I did. I love that about these records. Very simplified. They did not write the times that they ate. Okay? We'll talk about, in the next video, some different options you have for playing around with your records. And sometimes you do want to add more details. Sometimes it's helpful for you. Sometimes you enjoy it. But you don't have to. Right? They didn't write down the times that they ate. They didn't write down where they were. They didn't write down their mood. They didn't write down how they were feeling. They didn't do specific portion sizes here. They just wrote down what they ate. Okay. Now you should also write down what you drink. This person did not write down what they drink, so I'm going to presume that they just drank water on this day. But if you have like, a diet soda, write that down. We'll talk about that when we talk about condiments, sauces, and spices. But if they had a diet soda or tea or coffee or something like that, that should be in here as well. I'm going to presume that this person just drank water on this day. But that's all you need to know. Everything they ate is here. We have we know it was a banana. They didn't just write fruit. We know it was a banana specifically. We know if they used any sauces or spices. That's important. They wrote coconut extract. They wrote this flavored water in here. We know that they used some sauces and spices. That can be important when you're trying to figure out why you're gaining weight or why you're not losing. You do want to know your sauces and spices. Okay. They would also write in here if they ate anything else. So this person has a plan where they're trying not to do anything but shakes and entrees. But if they had grilled chicken, they would write grilled chicken here. If they had pasta, they would write pasta here. If they had Oreo cookies, they would put Oreo cookies. Right? Regardless of what they ate. And whether they thought it was a good choice or a bad choice, it's just an honest record. Here's what I did. There's no judgment behind it. For the foods that you prepare, you may want to put a little bit more detail about serving size. If you ate 1 Oreo cookie, that's cool. If you ate 8 Oreo cookies, you probably want to write that down. So as much as you can, you might want to put some stuff about serving size in here. But the main thing is, what did I eat? And how did I make it? My brain stopped for a second here. The main thing is, what did I eat? And what did I do to make it? Sauces and spices. Okay, if you did chicken, you might also want to put I grilled it or I baked it, as opposed to if it was fried. That's probably important information to have. Okay, but that's the detail. Worst case scenario, I will keep a record of everything that I did. Okay, at the bottom here, you can see they wrote down what they did for physical activity. Same thing. I did 20 flights of stairs. There it is. All right, I did treadmill, 30 minutes. I did bike, 10 minutes. Okay, I did weights, 20 minutes. Put it in there. Now here they actually did put the times. Again, that might be helpful, but that's not a requirement. It's just what did you do? Okay, and specifically how many minutes. So I actually give this person a thumbs down because I don't know how long 20 flights of stairs is, but I bet that they have it memorized. They know 20 flights of stairs is 10 minutes or whatever it is. How fast can you do 20 flights of stairs? I don't even know. But they probably have this memorized by now. I would recommend you put the times. 30 minutes, 10 minutes. Because when you go back and look at that chart to calculate your physical activity, you're going to want to know that time. Okay? The specific time you did the activity is not necessarily necessary. That's something you can play around with. But that is a detail that you can leave off if you'd like to. And I've just developed the hiccups, so I hope that those don't permeate into the rest of this video. Okay, so they wrote down what they ate. This is the bare minimum. Okay, when you are writing your rule, let me bring that back up. Okay, what I ate. That's good enough. You don't have to put it any more detail than that. But when you're writing down the rule, if you want more detail, put it here. So if you say, here, I'll move my picture again. If you say, I want to write down what I ate and the time. Okay, make it a rule. Bare minimum. If the whole world turns upside down, I can write down what times I eat. I can put in my phone what times I eat. Okay, it is worth putting here if you want to put it on paper, or if you want to put it in your phone, or if you want to have a spreadsheet on your computer where you're going to keep the records, you can do that. I do like, put it on paper. That gives you some flexibility if you want to. Paper. So we'll say on paper, what I ate, the times that I ate. Okay, now you have a record. Okay, that's what you need at a bare minimum for the record keeping. There's another piece though that I want to show you in that same record where they wrote out everything that they ate. If we scroll down a little bit, you can see there's some stuff here at the bottom. And I strongly recommend that this be a part of your record as well. This is, what am I going to do with the records? Okay, there's a tool on our website, which is now down there, mhwonline.com. There's a resource there where you can record your own plan. And it asks you, when it comes to the record keeping session, how do you want to keep your records, but also what do you want to do with them? I'm going to address that second question in a second. So first, let me explain what this is. What they have done here at the bottom, if it's not obvious, is they have added up throughout the day the numbers which represent the goals that they have given for themselves in their weight loss plan. Okay, let me clarify. In our plans, we have said we're going to have 5 fruits and vegetables every day. I'm keeping records of everything that I eat. In my records, let me track it. This person had 6 fruits and vegetables that day. I had a goal to get 5. I had 6. Great. I had 4 vegetables and 2 fruits. That's what you see in this record. Okay? They had a goal for physical activity. It's to get 2,000 calories that they wanted to burn. On this day, they have 475 of them. So they're adding up to see whether or not they're reaching those goals that they set within their plan. Okay, that's what these numbers are. These are the meal replacements. MR stands for meal replacement. They had 6. Their goal may have been 3 shakes and 2 entrees. That's what I used in the example plan. Here they had 4 shakes and they had 2 entrees. So they met their goal. Their goal was to have at least 3. They had 1 more. The goal was to have at least 2 entrees. They had exactly what they needed. You can absolutely have extras if you want to, just like they had extra fruits and vegetables. But they're adding up the goals that they set in their original plan. Okay. Now, why do I recommend that you do this? Well, add up goals. Okay, why do we recommend that you do that? Well, quite simply, it's because of the relationship between these two together. Okay, Okay, what I mean by that is, if my goal is to lose 50 pounds and I'm checking weekly to see if I'm making progress, if I am making progress, then I want to know what is helping me make that progress. Here's my plan that I wrote out. Doop. Okay, here's my plan. I'm making progress. I'm happy. If I keep following this plan, if I keep doing what I've been doing, hopefully I continue to see the results that I want to see. If, however, I'm keeping track of my goal here and I'm not making progress, maybe I'm gaining weight, or maybe I'm losing, but I'd like to lose a little bit faster. Okay, my progress is not where I want it to be. I've been tracking it weekly. It's not where I want it to be. Well, now I know I'm not happy. I want to change something. That's why we record keep in the first place. I've been keeping track on paper of what I've done. I've added up my goals. Right? I've been adding up. I've been having 5 fruits and vegetables every day. I've been keeping track of that. I'm not getting what I want. Now I know it's time to make an adjustment. And I know if I'm going to adjust something, it's going to be this. I've been keeping track of my goals. I've been keeping track of my physical activity. And they're not lining up. I'm not getting what I want, so I know maybe I want to change my physical activity. Okay? So this comes in very strongly, and it's the whole reason why you keep records, is if you change your goal, or if you're not reaching your goal and you want to push yourself to get on track, to break through a plateau, maybe you were losing weight and it started to level off. If you want to figure out what to do next, you need to be keeping track so you know it's time to make a change. And then when you do make a change, you're going to use the records that you've been keeping for so long. Okay? And you should, if nothing else, be keeping track of your rules that you put in place in the first place. There's another piece of record keeping which is worth mentioning, but it's smaller, and that is accountability. If I have to write down what I do, then I pay more attention to it, and I'm more likely to do what I'm supposed to. I know I have to write it down if I eat a cheeseburger, and I feel guilty, and I don't want to write it down, so I don't eat the cheeseburgers, because I know I have to do that record keeping. That's one of the reasons why you want to keep it as a demand. Every day I want these records, because if I don't, then it's easier to make those concessions. You lose that accountability. Okay, so now comes the part where we get to talk about this support. And we mentioned at the beginning of this section that these 3 goals are really about accountability and being able to make adjustments, being able to get more motivation, being able to ask questions. If I'm bored, I need to do something different. If I need to get recipes, if I need to get an idea for how to handle a challenge like a birthday party, I need to be able to have the information to go forward with that step. That means first and foremost, keeping track of what's going on. If I'm not happy, making changes. And then it means having a resource that I'm supposed to be working with in order to get the advice I need to move forward. Okay, so before I explain that one, the last thing I want to say about these 2 is that the next video is entirely about making changes. Once you have this plan in place, you have these records you're keeping track of your results. If you want to make a change, we're going to talk about that in the next video, where you can make changes, what options you have, what things you can adjust. Talk about that in the next video, I promise. All right, finally, we have the support. Okay, and what you're trying to put in place here is the resource which you will utilize in order to have an outside influence on your behavior. That was a really dumb way to say it. What we're asking is, I can't do everything myself. I can't be accountable to myself. I can't come up with all the recipes I'm going to use. I don't have time. I don't have the energy. I don't care enough to spend hours in the kitchen to learn how to cook mushrooms properly. I don't have the time to figure out a good plan for Thanksgiving. I only get Thanksgiving once a year. Wouldn't it be nice to have someone I could talk to who has been through it before, or who has worked on it before, who has seen 100 other Thanksgivings and knows what works and what doesn't work? Let me get that shortcut. Okay, so part of it's accountability. Part of it is emotional support. If you're falling off track, you want somebody to pick you back up and put you back in. That's, of course, very important. But more important than any of those two, and anything else that you could get from somebody else, most importantly, is ideas. You're not going to have all the ideas yourself. Even the most creative, the most intelligent, the most knowledgeable folks that I've worked with, just you don't have every possible recipe. And I have been very open with my clients, and when I do these live streams, almost any good idea I ever share was stolen. I did not make up most of these ideas. They're ideas that I got from other people, and I figured out how to modify them for myself and to make them work for my situation. Okay, that is, I would say, I don't want to exaggerate. That rule is as important as each of the other 6, or each of the other 5. It might be the most important, especially if you've heard these things before. Okay, often I have people who restart. They lost weight, but they started to gain it back, or they tried doing something like this and then they quit before they got to their goal, and they want to get over that and finish it out. I get these people a lot, and the thing that makes the difference is the support, because the rules don't change, especially if you're restarting or you're doing something that you've done before in the past. The rules haven't changed. The only thing that's going to change is how you approach the rules and whether or not you stick to the rules. So this is often a make or break it sort of part of the plan, especially if you struggle long term, or if you struggle roller coasters, or if you've been through it before and you're trying to get back on track, or whatever the case is. So the support is key. What are we putting in here? Okay, very simple. You're going to put a name, place, or group which you can reach out to in order to find what you need. A name, place, or group that you can reach out to in order to find what you need. Okay, that could be an individual. Okay, could be a friend, a family member, a doctor, a nutritionist, a personal trainer, a coach, your roommate. It could be anybody. A person that you can reach out to. If you know somebody who's really good at cooking vegetables, one of my best resources was a friend I had in high school who was vegetarian. And I just know I could go to that person and say, how do you cook whatever vegetable I want to cook? And they'll have an idea. Might not always be the best idea for me, but they'll have an idea, right? Depends on what kind of support you need. But for recipes, who do you go to? Who's the first person you go to? And if that person doesn't have the right answer, who's the next person you go to? Right? For strategies, hey, I'm going to a restaurant. I'm not sure how I want to handle it. I've never been to the Olive Garden before. What would you do if you were in that situation? Right? A person that, A, you can trust and feel comfortable sharing those challenges with, but also B, knows the right answer to that. You don't want somebody who has not been successful with their own weight loss. You don't want somebody who you don't trust their knowledge, where you wouldn't take their advice. If there's a chance that they're going to give you bad advice, even like, especially if it's advice that sounds good but isn't accurate, then I wouldn't pick that person, right? Or I wouldn't use that person for that advice. If you ask for a recipe to cook vegetables, that's something you can ask pretty much anybody. If you ask about what physical activity can I do so that I don't damage my shoulder while I'm going through rehab, that's a little bit more specialized. You should probably talk to a particular person about that. Okay, but it could be a person. It could also be a resource. I like website resources. I like forums. I like communities. Could be a Facebook community or a Reddit community or an online forum that you're a part of. Those can all be good. Could be a website. You know, all right, this website always posts new recipes weekly. I'll check out that website. That'll be the place that I go for support. Or it could be a live stream. It could be us. It could be mhwonline.com. I'm going to go there. I'm going to email their office when I have questions. And I'm going to go to their live stream, and I'm going to bug Spencer because he's the one who made this video in the first place. I wouldn't even be in this trouble if it weren't for him. That's the place that I'm going to go. It could be somebody that you hire, somebody that you pay money to. It could be, it really could be almost anything, but it needs to have a human element to it. There's a person, and I trust them, and I believe in their advice, and I care about what they have to say. And I feel comfortable bringing to them these challenges that I have. Okay? Find that resource, please. I will link periodically on our website to different communities that I like and different resources that I like to recommend for my clients to use. But there are a lot of places you can go. We also don't want to neglect physical activity here. So is there a gym that you have faith in? Is there a personal trainer that you're familiar with? Is there a physical therapist that you know? Is there somebody that you can lean on for that advice? Okay, this is probably the most open-ended of all of these pieces of the plan. But what you want here is two pieces. First, who and where are you going? And second, how often are you going to contact them? Okay, this is the minimum part. Every part of the plan so far has been worst case scenario. If the world turns upside down, I'll do at least this. At least this much activity, at least this many vegetables, at least this much record keeping. Support is the same. So if I say, I'm going to talk to my mom, right? Then I need to say, what's the bare minimum? At least once a week. Once a week, I call my mom. I say, hey mom, I'm looking for a recipe for broccoli. What do you got? I say, hey mom, I'm struggling with depression this week. What can I do that will help me eat my vegetables when I'm dealing with this depression? What will make me more likely to do that? What will make it more fun? What will keep me accountable? What can I do that'll push me through that? Right? It's who you're going to go to, and it's how often you're going to go to. Okay? And again, just like with the goal tracking, we mentioned that you will have goals that you can really only check on once every 2 months. You might have support options that you go to once every 2 months. Right? I have certain websites I go to once a month, and I double check for the last month how many recipes, especially recipe websites. I might check that recipe website, once every 3 months and just look at all the new things that they have. Or I might go to a forum once a week and just look at all the new posts that they had that week. Okay? So there are some support systems that you'll go to weekly. There are some that you might check in with daily. A lot of my Facebook and Reddit communities and my online forums, some of those I might check every day. Especially if I have a question and there's a conversation that's happening, or if there's something new that's going on, like if there's a new like Heinz condiment that just came out, then there might be conversation about, oh, well, what can we do with this new condiment and where does it go? I might check back that like several times in order to see where it goes. But depending on the community, you might go back once a week, you might go back once a month, you might check in once every 6 months, okay? But you need this. Who are you going to? Mom and Facebook. That's where I get all my advice. And Spencer. And then how often do you check in on them? And you say, okay, I'm going to go talk to my mom weekly. I'm going to go on Facebook daily. All right, and I realize I'm dating myself a little bit. You go on Instagram. You go on Pinterest. You check those out maybe daily. And then I'm going to talk to Spencer once a week. I'm going to go check out his live stream, and I'll ask questions in there. Okay, or I'll go to his website and see if he's posted any new recipes once a week. Okay, that's the support section. Where are you going to go? How often are you going to go? And it's a minimum. When you put this in your rule, you say, all right, no matter what, If the whole world turns upside down, I can call my mom once a week. No matter what, I'll talk to my doctor once every 6 months. That's the minimum that you're putting in place here. Okay? Now, the person that you talk to could be related to your goals. If your goal is a medical goal, one of these people is probably going to be a medical professional. Or the person you talk to could be related to the weight loss specifically. So you might want a trainer, physical therapist, someone who's up on physical activity, or you might want someone who's up on the dieting side of things, a specific coach. I actually do weekly in-person groups, live groups here in our office, and I do live groups online. I do one-on-one coaching periodically. So it might be someone that's like professionally within the field. Okay? And I sure would love if it was me, but if it's not, that's okay. Take the information, put the plan together for yourself, make it work. Now comes the tricky bit. The last rule that we put in place. Now, I'd like to be very clear before we put anything in this section. Okay? Let's review what we have so far. We've got fruits and vegetables, some kind of meal replacements, physical activity, a goal that we're tracking, records that we're keeping, and a place to go for support. That is your plan. You're done. In a little bit, we're going to do a couple of example plans. I'll show you some different options that you have, and then we'll actually take a look at what a typical day might look like. And I'll put typical in quotations because no day is ever the same. But that's it. There are those 6 components. You must have those 6 components if you're serious about losing weight. If you're just fooling around, I don't know why you would sit through this video. I'm looking at the timer here. It looks like I've been talking for over 2 hours already. This is a long video if you're not serious about this. If you care enough about your weight to care, you need those 6 things. If you look at anybody who has been successful long-term, and I mean they lost weight and they kept it off forever, I promise you they did those 6 things. The only questionable bit here is meal replacements, but in the next video we'll talk about what meal replacements might mean in the long term. There's a lot of options for meal replacements. For example, canned tuna can be a meal replacement in the long term. It's just the idea that it's already a single portion, 1 can, it's easy to prepare, it doesn't take much thought, I know that it's healthy for me. Right? If you look at anybody who's been successful long term, they have shortcuts. They have things that are fast, that are easy, that they don't have to think about, that they know are healthy, whether it's a frozen meal or something they get at restaurants or something that's packaged in some other way or something that somebody cooks for them. Maybe it's something that they meal prep and they keep in the freezer. I promise you, anybody who's been successful does these 6 things. They did them a lot when they were trying to lose weight. They're still doing them to some extent now that they've lost their weight. Maybe they found simpler ways or easier ways and found some shortcuts long term, which I hope happens for everybody. You want it to be easier long term. But especially in the early stages, they were doing all of these things. In the long term, they're still doing these things. If they stop doing these things, I'd put a timer on them, and I'm going to bet money that they're going to gain their weight back. And I don't mean that meanly at all. I can only say that these are the things that have to be done. The research is so explicitly clear. This is my word of the video. It's explicitly clear. People who are successful do these things. Okay, that's it. If this is all you want in your plan so far, that's a good enough place to start. Pick some numbers. And again, I'll walk you through a couple of options, but pick some numbers. Pick them at random if you want to. You have a plan, now follow it. Okay, in the next video, we'll talk about changing it. So if you pick random numbers and you don't like it, we'll talk about how you can change it. But pick them, do them. Those 6 things will get you there. There are some opportunities to throw in some extra rules. Okay, you do have the ability to put some extra stuff in. If you'd like to, that's more personalized and that doesn't really fall into one of the other categories. The only thing that I can emphasize to you guys here is if you put too many rules, it's going to become overbearing. You can't have too many things you're trying to focus on. You need to focus on the important stuff, and then the extra stuff is just there supplemental. It's just there supportively. Okay, so don't put too many rules in here. The second thing that I'll emphasize is that the rules that you do put become mandatory. So don't put them on paper and then later on try and come up with a concession. If you say, oh, I'm never going to go to a restaurant in addition to all this stuff, that might be a rule you put on yourself. But if you say, I'm never going to go to a restaurant unless it's my birthday or unless my friend comes into town, well, what's the point in making the rule? If you're going to go to a restaurant, you better start practicing. You better figure out how you're going to do it. If you start making one reason to go to a restaurant, you're going to come up with other reasons to go to a restaurant. And you can't just go to a restaurant and throw the whole plan out. You need to figure out how you're going to approach those scenarios. Okay? So don't make these situational rules where it's like, I'm going to do this, but then once a week on Friday, I can eat a cheeseburger. And that's the only time I do it. That's too many rules to keep in mind. And you can't have these concessions. You need it to be the same all the time. Every day, no matter how bad it gets, these are the things I can do. If you don't feel like you can commit to doing it on a regular basis, don't write it as a rule. Leave it as flexibility if you want to be able to do those things, but don't write it as a rule. The last thing I'm going to say about the extra rules is you don't want a lot of no's, a lot of no rules, and that is restrictions, things that cut you back. If you'd like to, you can write a bunch of extra rules that says no cheeseburgers and no going to the movies and no pizza and no this and no that and no cookies. And that's fine, except you're going to end up with 100,000 things that are no, you shouldn't be doing. Don't worry about the no's. Focus on the yeses. If you do the right stuff, then the no's will be taken care of. If the no's are not taken care of, if you're trying to get away from cheeseburgers and you have all these rules and yet you keep having trouble with cheeseburgers, it's time to put in more rules, more yeses. Don't write a rule that just says no cheeseburgers because you clearly haven't figured it out yet. What you need is to say, all right, 5 fruits and vegetables isn't enough. Let me up it to 20 fruits and vegetables and see if that doesn't get those cheeseburgers out of my routine. At a certain point, I'm too full, I'm too busy, I don't want the cheeseburgers. Okay, if that's the case. Or write a rule that says I'm going to have a turkey burger once a week or a veggie burger. That's a yes rule. That's a thing that you can do. And if you do it, you'll have less cheeseburgers. Okay? And that may be the most important of all. If you're going to write any rules, do them every day and make sure that they're good rules. Make sure that they're consistent. If you're not going to do them every day and if they're restrictive, they're not going to be helpful. With that said, there's a lot of things that you can put in here. You could theoretically put a no rule. The most popular no rules are environmental, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next video. But environmental rules are things like, I'm not going to keep cookies in my house. It's not don't eat cookies. It's I don't keep cookies in my house because I don't feel comfortable. And it's just easier for me if they're not there. I don't keep pizza in my house, right? It could be I'm not going to go to the movies for the next couple of weeks. It's just not an environment that I want to get into. Okay, those kind of rules can be put here. I'll list it out. It's any kind of environmental rule. These also apply to the people that you're with. Right? It's the food you see, the places you go, the people you're with. You might have a rule that says, I'm not going to eat lunch with my coworkers anymore for this period of time because I can't control myself. I haven't figured that out yet. Okay. Long term, I have to stress this. You're going to want to eat with your coworkers. So you're going to need to figure out how to incorporate these healthy things into your routine. And I think it's much healthier to figure out, all right, if I want to eat lunch with my coworkers, what fruits and vegetables can I get? They want to go out to a restaurant. What's at that restaurant? Or what do I keep back at the office? So if they want to order out, I've got something here and we can still all eat together. It's much healthier to do that in the long term. But you may have environmental rules that are like, all right, I'm not eating with this person for a little bit because I have extra trouble around that person. I had a rule about hanging out with some friends. There was somebody I worked with who had a rule that was, I'm not going to eat at the poker game on Friday. And it was just sort of a short-term thing. I think for a period of time they didn't go to their poker game at all. And then when they finally did start going and they felt comfortable being in that environment again, they said, I'm not going to eat anything while I'm there. I'm going to eat before I go. And so they had this extra rule that was in place that was there. Okay, you could have an environmental rule. You could have an exclusionary rule. Is that even close? No, I missed an X. I meant to type that X, guys. I get credit for that. I spelled it right the first time. You could have an exclusionary rule. Okay, this is a no rule. Okay, for specific foods. I'm not gonna mess with pasta right now. I don't feel comfortable with that yet. I'm gonna take this plan. I'm gonna use the rules I have. I'm gonna build up, hopefully, to getting back into pasta at some point. Just be very aware that exclusionary rules are temporary. You're not telling yourself you're not gonna do something forever. It's possible you might want to put a rule like that in place. I don't recommend it. The one version of that rule that I like, okay, actually I guess there are two, and I'll show you. We got to go back to this other resource real quick. There are two exclusionary rules which I think are okay. Right. If you can remember back far enough in this presentation, I showed you this calorie guide. Very often I will give the explicit advice, if you're interested in losing weight, avoid these red background foods. For a period of time, avoid them. Figure out what else you can eat instead. Set a rule for yourself where you're trying to get away from them. I'm still very careful about that. I would almost rather not write it as an explicit rule, but just it's a goal. I'm trying not to eat too many of these 7s to 10s. The reason for that is because I don't want to feel guilty if I had a moment of weakness, and I don't want to ignore it. What tends to happen is if I read a rule that says no cheeseburgers, and if you haven't figured it out by now, cheeseburgers are my biggest temptation. If I read a rule that says no cheeseburgers, I know that cheeseburgers are no good for me. If I eat one, after I wrote a rule that said no, 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 I'm never allowed to eat a cheeseburger, if I eat one, I'm more likely to feel guilty because I know I had a rule that said no. And I'm more likely to spiral. I'm more likely to do it again. I'm more likely to sort of sink into my own self-destruction at that point because I made a rule that says I wasn't going to do it. And so then you start talking to yourself and it's like, Spencer, you dummy, you know better than this. Why did you fall for that trap? You shouldn't have done it. Now it's going to mess up your progress and you're going to embarrass yourself and none of your clients are going to believe in you anymore. They're going to find out you ate this cheeseburger and no one's gonna come work to you and the business is gonna go under and you're gonna fail the community, and your brain sometimes plays terrible tricks on you in that way, right? Hopefully it's not just my brain. That guilt has a higher chance of latching on when I had a specific rule that said don't do it. Okay, I would rather have a general goal of just let's stay out of that category. Focus on the other foods. I know I can eat them. And again, there's no timing rules. I can eat any time I want. I can eat as much as I want. No calorie counts. It's just, I'm not eating these foods right now. Okay, so it's more so a goal that I have for myself than an exact rule not to do it. But I also want to say, if I eat a cheeseburger after I have a rule like that, I'm more likely to ignore it because I feel bad that I've broken my rule. So I'm more likely to just be like, let's pretend that didn't happen. Let's get back on track. Let's try and keep going. And that's not really what you want. We'll talk about this in the next video a little bit more, but what you really want when you eat that cheeseburger is to figure it out. To say, man, I know I wasn't trying to eat a cheeseburger, and I ended up eating it anyways. What could I do differently? And what went wrong? Where was I? Who was I with? What do I think might help me replace that cheeseburger? Or what would be a better solution if I was in that scenario again? That's what you really want to do. And it's hard to do that when you feel guilty. It's hard to do that when you have these explicit no rules. Especially if you have a lot of them and you start breaking a lot of them. It can be very oppressive. So I don't know if I would write that outright. I'm actually inclined to just take it off this list. Exclusionary rules are very, very tricky. okay? I have to leave it because you can do it, but I'd be very careful about getting into these types of rules, to the extent that I don't like writing them at all for myself, and you should be very aware that if you break any one of these rules, you have not failed. Okay? It means that you faced a challenge, that life says this plan is tough, and that life says we got to figure out how to solve it. You didn't fail. Life gave you a circumstance that you have to figure out. So it's very important to keep that perspective. All right. The rule that I want to put in here is, I think, a version of the exclusionary rule. Sauces and spices, and also beverages, by the way. Okay, it's a version of the exclusionary rule, but it's not the way that we write it. All right, let's go back to that resource. Essentially, for sauces and spices, the rule is stay out of the 7s to 10. That's the way that I've always written it for my clients. That's the way I recommend you do it. I don't think there's any other way to write it. The rule is stay out of these 7s to 10s. But I want to give you some specific guidelines so you know what that means. It is an exclusionary rule, but that's not the way that we write it. The way that we're going to write it is, I guess I didn't have to come back to this page anyways. The way that we're going to write it, per 100 milliliters. Okay, that's it. Technically, this is exclusionary. I'm saying don't eat spices or sauces that have more than that many calories, and don't drink beverages that have more than that many calories. This is an extra rule. It's an optional, so you don't have to impose this on yourself. But what this does is it removes the influence of butter, cheese, bacon bits, sour cream, sodas and alcohol, things that might slow down your weight loss without you paying attention to them. Beverages and spices can be the most impactful, and they're definitely the biggest cause of confusion. When somebody comes in and they say, Spencer, I'm gaining weight and I don't know why, it's almost always a sauce or a spice or a beverage that they're using. Because we don't pay attention to those as much, and we don't think they make as big of a difference as they do. One of the biggest offenders recently has been olive oil, because olive oil has a reputation for being good for us. And they say, oh, well, olive oil is supposed to be healthy. I've been cooking with this olive oil, and I've been using it in these dressings, and I've been doing these things with it. And we can debate the health benefits of olive oil, but I can tell you that olive oil is 100 calories per tablespoon, sometimes more. And especially if you start looking at things like coconut oil or avocado oils, different oils, but olive oil as well. That's 6 times, 7 times more than what I would consider a decent sauce or spice. Okay, the thing to keep in mind about sauces and spices, and the same with beverages, is that there's really no upper limit on them. You can use a lot of salad dressing if you want to. You can drink a lot of coffee if you want to. So it's really easy to overindulge in them, and to use a little bit stretched a long way. It's such a very scary undertaking to start utilizing different sauces and spices. They can make a big difference before you recognize it. So I don't recommend olive oil. I don't recommend anything in that red background, the 7s to 10s, period. If you're really serious about losing weight, you got to try and find the substitutions, even in the long term. I mentioned a little while ago I started getting hiccups, right? They're still there. Even in the long term, you got to get away from those 7s to 10s. You got to start finding substitutions. You got to figure out how to make a turkey burger taste good, and how to do different toppings on your pizzas. That's fun. It's fun to be able to still eat burgers and to still be able to have pizza, and to know how to make it in a way that I can eat it every day and not feel guilty about it. Right? You want to do those things. You need to do those things to be successful long term. It's how you have a happy life and not feel like you're on a diet forever. But especially when you're trying to lose weight, these are exclusionary rules. I'm in effect telling you don't do those things. But what I'd really like to do for you guys is to phrase it as an additive rule. You are meant to be looking for sauces and spices and beverages that fit within these calorie ranges. If you can find something in here, it becomes a resource for you. Get excited. Look out for them. Go to the grocery store, scan the aisles, pick something up. Say, oh, can't use that, put it back. Pick something else up and go, man, I never thought I would be able to use this, but it fits. I'm allowed to have this. We have found Alfredo sauces. We have found cream cheese. We have found really cool things, gravies that I never thought that you could do and still lose weight. New things that have been invented within the last 5 or 10 years, things that have been around for a long time. But especially in this marketplace, there's new stuff coming out all the time. It's so cool. I fall in love when I am surprised by something like that, that fits into a good range and I can use on a regular basis and I genuinely enjoy. And I promise that you will as well. So I don't like to read this as an exclusionary rule. Technically, yes, we're saying stay away from the other stuff. But I'd really like to have you view it as try and find these things. And when you do, hold on to it. Think about how you want to use it. Bring it in on a regular basis. Do it forever. Make it a part of your home. These will always pay off for you. So just to be very clear, we have drawn a line. Anything over 10 calories per 8 ounces is going to be outside of the structure. Now, this is a rule I use pretty much for everybody, but I'm writing it here as an extra rule. If you choose not to use this rule, be careful, it might get you in trouble. But also understand that you could change this number. You could say it's got to be under 20 calories per 8 ounces. You can try that out. You can explore it. For spices, not normally spices, but usually condiments, sauces like ketchup or barbecue sauce or hot sauces or things like that, you can change this number if you want. You could set it at 30 calories per tablespoon, or you could set it at 10 calories per tablespoon. You could bring it down even lower if you want to. You can write a rule that says it has to be 0. It has to be absolutely 0 or I'm not going to bother with it. Okay? We set these numbers very specifically over the years. There are certain things that this allows and there are certain things that this does not allow. And we were very careful to pick these numbers and to test it out to make sure that this works the way we want it to. What's going to be key is when you set this, it becomes structured. And what I mean by that is if you set a rule for 15, if you find a sauce that's 16 calories per tablespoon, it's really easy to say, well, that's just one more. And then you find something that's 18 per tablespoon. And you say, well, that's just a little bit more. And then 20 or 25. You say, well, that's just a little bit more. It's really easy to let it erode and to make deeper and deeper cuts, deeper concessions, and worse choices. And again, the thing you want to keep in mind about this is per tablespoon. Olive oil is 100 calories per tablespoon. If you use a quarter cup of salad dressing, which is not a lot, at least not for me, and it's got a large portion of it that's olive oil, you're talking about 400 calories that you just added to your salad for very little impact. Much, much better to find a different way to make your salad dressing so that it's 0 calories or as low as possible so that you can keep seeing the progress you want to. That's the tricky thing about sauces and beverages is they add up very, very quickly and it makes a big difference. It may not feel like it. You might say it's just 1 tablespoon or it's just a little bit, but it'll make a big difference. So whatever number you set, have it be a solid number. Say, all right, if it's 20, it's 20. If it's 10, it's 10. 15 is where we like it. That's the magic number for us. But that's our answer for sauces and spices. So you had some, well, you didn't have questions. I assumed that you would have questions about how to cook your fruits and vegetables and what you can use with your meal replacements. There's a lot of things that this allows. I will bring up a handout actually real quick. Because why not? This video is already really long. We might as well. There is a handout. And again, all of this stuff is on our website, MHW Online. But there is a handout here for sauces and spices. This rule is written. I'll highlight it here. 15 calories per tablespoon or less. I didn't make it up. This is what we use in our clinic. And here's a list of all the things that we think should just go in your pantry or in your refrigerator. These are things that pretty much everybody uses at some point throughout the process, and they're worth exploring. Broths to make soups. There are butter flavorings. You need a replacement for butter if you like butter. There's sprinkles, powders that taste like butter, and there's also sprays, spritzer bottles that taste like butter. Extracts. I'm a big fan of almond extract personally. I've been picking up on coconut extract more recently. Low-calorie salad dressing. You're going to need a salad dressing at some point. At least I strongly recommend it. I don't eat that much salad, but when I do, I need a salad dressing. And even when I'm not eating salad, I use the salad dressing to make potato salads, to make corn and black bean salads, to make dips, to do pasta salads when I started incorporating pasta. There's a lot that you can do with a salad dressing besides just salad. So definitely salad dressings. You're going to need a mayo substitute if you like mayo. There's a lot of options for that. Hot sauce, horseradish, ketchup, lemon and lime juice. I'm doing more with lemon juice recently. Actually, I've been doing more with lime juice as well. These are really helpful when you start doing seafood, but they're also really nice for the right fruits and vegetables too. Mustard, yellow mustard specifically, but most, brown mustards and things like that. Fat-free sour cream, non-calorie sweeteners, something like Splenda or stevia, a sugar-free sweetener. Non-calorie syrups, there are some options for that I link on our website. There's a couple of different brands, but you mostly see them advertised for coffee. So there'll be like a caramel syrup or a hazelnut syrup. That's nice. Non-fat whipped cream. Non-fat sour cream. Non-fat sour cream is here twice. We've been using this handout for a long time. Non-fat sour cream is here twice. Non-fat cooking spray, or non-stick cooking spray, would be something like Pam spray. That's good for sauteing your vegetables and things like that without utilizing olive oil. Salt and pepper and most spices. Salsa, which I actually count towards vegetables servings as well, if you use a lot of it. And if you get like a fresh salsa with not too much added into it. But even jarred prepared salsas can be good. Soy sauce, spices and herbs, sugar-free gelatin powders. Those are nice for shakes. If you do any meal replacement shakes, take a strawberry gelatin, put it in the shake, just a teaspoon, and you got a strawberry shake. So they're helpful for that. There's some different desserts and things that we do with that. Sugar-free maple syrup is my favorite replacement for honey. If you ever have a recipe that has honey in it, sugar-free maple syrup has become my swap in there. And there's a bunch of cool things you can do with that. I like it on baked sweet potatoes. Sugar-free, fat-free pudding powders. Cocoa powder. Vinegar, which I've been meaning to do a little bit more. I do a lot of balsamic like vinaigrettes, but I do want to look at vinegar a little bit more as an ingredient. And Worcestershire sauce. Alright? And there's a little bit here about creamers and stuff too. That's a bunch of stuff that I just named, okay? Just understand that all of that can fall within the proper range. You will have to taste test it. You will have to try recipes. You'll have to figure out how you want to use it. But there is a replacement for butter if you like butter on your vegetables. There is a replacement for olive oil if you like to cook your vegetables a certain way. There are replacements for mayonnaise if you like potato salads or you like broccoli salads or coleslaw or those sorts of things. There's a replacement for most things nowadays. You just have to be willing to look for it. Now, these are all generic with no like name brand specifics, but if you want to check out mhwonline.com, you will find over time, I'm adding to a list of links where you can go to specific brands and order them from Amazon and get them sent right to you of specific brands that I've already fact checked. I know that they fit into our range and you're good to go. Okay. Now, they do recommend some portion sizes here. Should I say we do recommend some portion sizes here? I tend not to stick to this. What I tend to say is if it's in that range, you're okay. If it has calories, keep track of how much you use. Put that in your records. And if you feel like maybe you're having too much, that's something you can play with later. If it is labeled as 0 calories, feel free to have fun with it. You can also keep track of the size, the portion size, if you feel like you might be having too much of that. But it's unlikely. If it's labeled as 0 calories, it's probably not going to get you in trouble. All right. As far as beverages, coffee, tea, water's the best choice. Flavored waters, diet sodas. Those are the big ones. There are a couple of instant apple cider mixes and instant hot chocolate mixes, which are interesting, that you can pursue. But those are kind of the big beverages that you're going to go for. Again, when I find something cool, we'll link something cool onto the website. There are energy drinks that fall within good ranges. There are things like sports drinks, like Gatorade, for example, that have low-calorie versions, which would fit into that quite nicely. Lots of good options in here. I don't want to dwell on this too much, because now the video is getting longer in this section than it needs to be. But this is an extra rule that you could have. I strongly recommend it to be one of your extra rules. Just pick a number. Okay, these are my numbers, and they're the numbers that I have my clients do, and we've had very nice success with that. If it's too restrictive, you're not going to have a lot of options to play with. If it's too loose, you're going to mess up your weight loss, and you're going to be confused and not understand why. So don't go too high, don't go too low. These are sweet numbers. All right. Besides that, you can put any other rule you want. You are writing this plan. So you're free to ignore everything I've said today and say, in addition to all of this, I also want to do a calorie count. Okay. I don't recommend it, but I've harped on that enough throughout this video. So you can feel free to put any other rules you want to in place here, but I would think about the environments that you spend time in. Are there any that you want to avoid, or are there any that you need to control and remove temptations, that sort of thing? If there is anything that you want to exclude, feel free to put that in place. One of the big ones is just anything that's too high calories, anything that's 7s and 10s, let's just chop it off. But I also often see, I want to play around with proteins right now, but I don't want to get into breads and pastas yet. So let's say we're not going to mess around with that too much right now. And then over time, adjust the plan and add those in when you feel comfortable with it. Okay? So that's it. That's really well and truly everything you need to know in order to make your first weight loss plan. Okay? What I'd like to do now is take a look at a couple of example plans. And I actually have not written these example plans up yet, so we're going to develop them together and show you what it might look like. And not only am I going to show you the plan, I'm also going to show you what a typical day might look like if you were following that plan. Hey guys, I just wanted to take pity on you. I know this has already been a pretty long video, so I'm going to clip it here and I'm going to save the examples for a separate video just to give yourself some time to decompress and process everything that we've gone over so far. When you're ready, go on to that next video in this series and you'll be ready to see how we did the examples and put everything in practice. Thanks. Bye.